Hello, welcome everybody. So this is day two. We're building a cloud connected game. This is day two. If you missed the first day, that's not a problem. Welcome, hi. Hope you're all having a great day. Let's show a little bit about what we've been building so far. This is what we've been building. So this is our game. I've added some art since the end of the last stream, just so that it looks a little bit more interesting. So we now have some ships that I built using Kenny's Asset Forge, which is a tool for building art assets from a bunch of things. As you can see, it's just plain itself, but the AI is not great. This is a thing that can happen. And then that goes away. Anyway, by adding art, we made the game a lot more interesting. The ships are now colored, and that's done just by swapping out materials. And then the ball itself is actually more of a disc with spokes. And the cool thing with that is that now it feels more dynamic because it rolls around and actually interacts with the environment. So we now have this thing just kind of moving around, which is fun. So this is how this works. I've also fixed a few minor things. I added these corner walls. One of the things that was happening is because we had these hard 90-degree angles, it was possible for the ball to end up in one of those corners and then everybody to kind of crowd around it. That wasn't great. So these little corners, until we get an actual arena designed, are how we're going to deal with that. And so now we have this. And everything works. We also have a score. This, at the end of the stream, I had accidentally broken. It works now. Just doing some small fixing things to do that. The reason it was broken, and we'll take a quick look at this, is this score tracker that I added. I added 2 score items that would show the score in the top left and right. But then I added them as children to this score tracker element, which by default is located in the center of the screen, which broke everything. What that ended up causing is that our text was off the screen except on specifically sized screens. And because of how my Unity editor was laid out, they would have only been on the screen on an ultra wide monitor, which isn't actually very helpful. And so I think that's most of everything. One of the other really cool things is we still have the player ship. It's still there, but I'm not playing. And the reason that's happening is because I actually, using some isolation of concerns and some software design principles, we actually split our ship and the way it works into 3 different components. And so the player controller or the AI controller can be swapped in independently, and we can use one or the other, and everything still works. Why not use Epic Engine? So Unreal is fine, and if that's something you know, you should use it. But also, game engines are inherently very complicated things. It's a very big tool to use. It's like picking up a different language in software, and probably even more work than that. And so, since I know Unity and C#, that's where I'm comfortable working. If you know Unity and you like Blueprint or Unreal, sorry, and you know blueprints and things like that, go for it. You can do all of the same stuff in that or any other engine that you're familiar with. You could even build your own if that fits your use better. But there's no strong reason why you should stick with one or the other. Really, it's just a design requirement, just like any other software engineering thing that you're going to have. You need to pick tools that match with the thing that you're trying to build, and fit the team that you're building it with. And so in this case, I know this, so that's what I'm using. So yeah, that's that. One other thing I should talk quickly about, because we actually didn't talk about this at all during day 1, but I just kind of threw this in because it wasn't really in line with anything we're doing. But I have tweaked how physics works in this game. There's actually two entirely different physics systems now. We have a collider, which is this. So this isn't showing any gizmos. Why not? There we go. So this collider around the ship is actually 4 colliders. So we have 2 along the wings, we have a box on front, and then we have a circle at the back. What this does is it sort of creates a shape that hopefully gives you a little bit more control over things, and it somewhat matches the ship. I'm not trying to exactly match what the ship looks like, because then if we ever change the ship, we'd have to go and redo our physics, which will what that will do is actually change how the game plays, which isn't what I want. So by doing this, we can actually kind of design something and then kind of roughly fit a ship to that shape, which is sort of what I've done. But this collider, this more detailed collider, is only used for interactions with the ball. And the way this is done is I've created a physics layer called ball interactive. And so that is only detecting collisions with the game ball in the arena. It doesn't even collide with itself. So other ships won't factor this in. This is not used for that. It's only used for detecting collisions with the ball. The other thing we've done is added an arena collider, which is just a circle. The reason for this is that if I actually run into a wall, I can still spin 360 degrees without any issue. So we can still pivot in place without getting stuck on any part of the arena. And it also prevents things like adding torque when you hit the side of a wall. So that's what that is. That's why we've done that. And it just sort of makes the physics play a little bit nicer. This is also how other ships collide with each other. So this circle is sort of used for every part of it, except colliding with the ball, where you have a more detailed collider for hopefully more control and options there. To do that, it's under project settings, under physics 2D. There is this option, this matrix of different interactions. So this is just a bit mask, which is a whole bunch of ones and zeros, defining how different systems will interact with each other. And so we just turned everything off for the ball interactive layer, except for the ball. So that's what this is describing. Everything else is left the same, with one note that the arena interactive, which is that circle, doesn't interact with the ball. And that means that the ball actually interacts with the more detailed one that we built. So that's all of that. That's why we did that. And then you just, to make that work, you just switch the layers to the layers related to what it is. So this one's the arena, this one's the ball, and then we also have the ball, which will have its own layer as well. Just make sure everything kind of plays nicely together. So we can use that as sort of a way to do everything else. And I think we're all caught up. I'm pretty sure that covers everything that we've talked about up to this point. So now let's go and do a little bit more. What I would like to do is actually kind of pivot away from this. What we're trying to do here is sort of build a game, but also explore how to do cloud stuff. And so what we're going to do is kind of try to do more of that today. We've built a game, it mostly works. And so what I would like to do is have it so that we can actually track when the player scores and update a online score counter so that the player can keep track of the total number of goals they have scored over the entire game. So over their entire career playing this game. That's what I'd like to build today. And then maybe we can add additional stats and additional things over time. But that's sort of I think where we'll get started, and then we can add more things as people suggest them, or we have thoughts, or we run into issues. It would also be neat to have like ways to tweak the AI online so that we could actually send different AIs to players, because this happens and it's less interesting. So that's what we're going to work on. There's a few things that I'll probably end up tweaking in the game as well. So like right now we have a black background, which makes it really hard to actually tell where you are in the game, because there's no references. There's no actual like fixed references. That's one of the reasons why all the ships have trails behind them, is that you can actually tell that you're moving in the middle of nothing. So we want something that'll make it a little bit easier to track that. But before we do any of that, let's go and actually make it so we can sign in. Let's go and figure out how to create a user account, an online user account, and how to actually do all of that fun, hard stuff. So we're going to just create a new scene. And basically what this is going to do is give us a way to just start from scratch and do whatever we want. So I created a completely empty scene. I don't know if I actually wanted to do that, but we can just add a camera back. And now everything's good. We'll save that, and then also save our scene into scenes. We should rename the sample scene to like our game scene, whenever that is, like 3v3 match or something. But this will be our main menu. Login. And so we can use that as sort of a way to interact with different things and manage how all of this works. So we can do whatever makes sense. Oops. There we go. So yeah, that's sort of what we're going to do. We're going to add a login system for this. There's a lot of different ways to do logins, and I am bad at logins, and I do not know how to implement my own auth system. So I don't really know how to do that. The cool thing is we don't need to. What we're going to end up using is some of these fancy tools that we have available to us. There's a whole list here at the .net.microsoft.com/apps/games website. So this gives you a whole list of different game engines and game services. If you're new to game development, there's also a getting started with Unity tutorial that you can kind of walk through at your own pace. We're not going to start there. Instead, we're going to be looking mostly at game services, and a lot of what we're going to be doing is actually going to be using a tool called PlayFab. So this is actually a service that lets you build game services, sort of a select number of game services that are common inside of video games. This is my account. Let me go back here. So this is the PlayFab account. One note here, just because I think this is kind of somewhat relevant, I've had this question come up. I'm using a personal like private email account and Microsoft account when I'm doing this. So costs and things are all coming from this. I also have never provided like a credit card or anything like that. So a lot of what we're going to show is stuff that you can access for free and get started with and kind of tinker with and see if it fits your game and use that as sort of a way to learn and experiment without having to necessarily pay for cloud services up front, which can be one of the reasons why you don't do that. When we sign in, it's going to ask you to sign in either with a PlayFab account or a Microsoft account. I'm already signed in, so we're just here. What we're going to do is actually create a new game, and your account might not look like this. The first thing you need is to create a studio. Your studios control a set of games, so a set of things that you've published. Good morning, welcome. Welcome to the stream. So your studio is going to be like a collection of games. It's going to be referencing different things. In this case, I already have one created. The other thing that you can do is create titles underneath each of those. So if we create a title here, let's just call this Spaceball. So we don't really have a website URL or an image, so we're just going to create this. And this will give us everything that we need to actually get started. So this is how we can actually start interacting and using what we built. So this is our tool for that. What we need in order to do that is to actually start connecting this, and there's a PlayFab API for Unity that you can just plug directly into Unity and start actually interacting with this. So that's what we're going to do next. It has been a number of months since I've done this, so I don't entirely know how we're going to do this. So we're going to learn together about how to actually install that plugin. But there's a whole bunch of things that PlayFab gives you. We are not going to cover all of it. Certain things like multiplayer are not something we're going to deal with, but it does give you a way to handle things like player accounts, player statistics, certain telemetry data, doing A/B tests over your game, or doing things like e-commerce and transactions that way, or setting up like multiplayer matchmaking servers. Those last ones we're not going to cover, just because I don't right now. That's a whole bunch of extra work that I don't even know where to start with. So we just don't have the time for it. But we can use this to sort of create players. There are no players right now, but we're going to create a way to do that. I can just manually go and create players, but that's not that interesting. What if I want to actually create players from inside my game? There's lots of ways we can do that, but we're just going to kind of tinker with that and start building from this. So let's go figure out where that API or the SDK is for this. PlayFab Unity SDK, which I think we'll get here. There we go. And so we can grab this, which will give us our editor extension. And then pop open an Explorer window and drag that into Unity. And then we should be good. I might need to hide some of this just because we are going to be logging in, and I would prefer if not everybody saw that. But that should give us a way to actually get everything set up. So let's go and just find that. So it ended up in my downloads. I'm just going to drag and drop the Unity package over into my assets, and that should trigger a Unity import for us. And so this is the entire SDK that we can use. So if I go and import that, we will end up with this, which is a whole collection of fun things, hopefully. So what this tool is going to do is it's actually going to give us a way to, one, browse our studio and titles that we've created, and two, connect everything and make sure it's all connected together. So that way we can actually start interacting with that. And then we'll be able to actually start using some of the fun things. The first thing we're going to be taking a look at is logging in. There are a lot of ways to do this, and PlayFab supports a few different ways to do that. There's everything from device ID all the way to OAuth using custom providers. And so what that means is that we can authenticate with a device. So if I have my phone just hanging out, this phone has a device ID attached to it, and we can use that device ID to authenticate our users, and to actually validate that it's coming from that device. That isn't necessarily going to provide all the same stuff that a username and password will, but what it does do is synchronize players to their device, so that if somebody else opens it from that device, all the information is still there. And the cool thing with that is it means you can do that without asking for a username and password. You don't need to lead with a account creation process in order to get started. So if you're downloading a mobile game and the first thing it does is display a pop-up and says, hey, please log in, then then people might leave and not want to do that. Whereas if you just have this authentication and you can upgrade users into a username and password later, you can do that. And that's sort of what this provides, is a way for us to do that process. PlayFab versus Unity Game Services. I'm not familiar with game services. So I'm not sure. I've tinkered more with PlayFab, but also my background is largely indie games. And so my use case might be different than yours depending on what you're trying to build and who your audience is and sort of what kind of game you're trying to build. For me, there's certain advantages that I get from using a cloud service. One of the big ones is as like an indie developer, it's really, there's not like any big launchers. There are some now that do exist and that people do sometimes use, but a lot of the time with indie games, people will just download an executable and play that. And then it's really hard to tell if you release a new version, it's really hard to like get people to actually grab that new version. And so the really neat thing with having like clients or cloud services is that if I want to change certain parts of the game, like I want to tweak how fast the player is or some other small like configuration changes, I don't need to ship an entire new version of my game to everyone and make sure they get that in order to get the new change. I can just update a cloud config and it will get downloaded the next time they run the game. And all of that will happen just transparently to the user, so they don't need to do anything. And that's one of the really, for me, that's one of the really cool things. It also gives me options to like A/B test that and see, do people get further in the game if they earn more points? Even if the points are the same, if points are multiples of 10 versus a multiples of 1, does that actually change people wanting to play and getting further in the game? Or does it make people get less far? You can kind of like use that as a way to sort of learn more about what's going on. How long have I been working as a game dev? So professionally, I have worked in lots of different things, and never professionally as a game dev. So that's interesting. My career started doing mostly backend services, sort of like cloud migration stuff. So taking legacy like monolithic legacy applications, and then figuring out how to pull those apart into smaller services that we could throw into a container or into Kubernetes, and then bring in and kind of provide the same service in a more maintainable way, as well as doing some DevOps stuff. Then I moved into developer experience. So as a developer experience engineer, your job is sort of to help all the other engineers, either internally, which is what I was doing, or externally, so everybody that would be using whatever tool it is you're using, to do their job more easily and kind of remove roadblocks and make that more delightful to work with. And then I've been doing some open source stuff with some Kubernetes stuff, and then moved into this cloud advocate role where I am currently. Throughout that entire period, so about 10-ish years, well, probably longer than that, but I think about 15-ish years is how long I've been building games. We kind of talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it actually started with a tool that has only worked in Windows 98, because I just had like an old computer sitting around. It was some old game engine that was using a variant of BASIC. So my first programming language was BASIC, where you actually had to like put the numbers in front of your lines. Things have gotten better. So that's where I started, and then I went into Game Maker, and then finally into Unity over a period of years. And then along that way, kind of learned C# and tinkered with like XNA when I was doing Zune development and Windows Phone development. So it kind of, yeah, did all of that. Mine was QBasic. I have never tried that. It was some like proprietary BASIC implementation, so that you could like directly reference like object creation and things. So it was like one line to create and draw a cube inside of your game, which was actually really handy for me as somebody who's learning. And BASIC is it's actually a nice language to learn with. I think a lot of people might have learned programming through like their calculators, because their calculators had a version of BASIC. And so it would be like, I'm going to create a game in that calculator language just in between classes when the when the teacher isn't looking. Things like that. And then there's lots of different ways to do it. But yeah, that's mostly my experience with all of this. Primarily, I focused on indie stuff because the games that I like to build are they're interesting, in the sense that I like exploring like weird concepts and kind of doing things that are a little bit odd. And because of that, like, I don't know, it's easier to do that as an indie developer than as somebody who needs to do it as a career. And so yeah. There's just different incentives for something that you build for yourself, which is sort of what I do as a indie developer, versus something that you build for a career or for your job. So, right, lots of fun stuff happening in chat. Sorry, just gonna get rid of that. So sorry. So we've been staring at this for a while. Let's where is this? Oh, and they're here too. Hi. Bye. Sorry, we're getting spam botted. So I'm just going to get rid of some of that for a bit. Cool. All right. As far as that's going, yeah, let's continue with this. The goal of this, like these streams are intentionally very long. Like they're longer than the streams that we've normally done on some of the, like the Microsoft Reactor channels or Microsoft developer channels. And the reason for that is hopefully we can kind of take detours, answer questions, talk about things that people are interested in. So we can't cover everything here, and we're not going to. But if it's something that you would like to, if you have questions or miss something or come back like tomorrow, then feel free to ask questions. That's what this is for. But yeah, hello, welcome. Let's go and actually get this signed in. I need to figure out how to do all of this. So let me go and sign in. I'm going to move that off the screen for a second and go and open this. Hold on. Not there. All right. We have all the fun stuff of managing passwords on everything. Did I not remove the spam? I thought I did. If it's still there, here we go. Apologies if I'm missing anything in chat. But, okay. Sorry, I thought I had blocked them, but maybe it only. Maybe that's just a only for me thing. I will double check and just make sure. Wait a second. Why am I forgetting how to sign in here? Sorry, I'm distracted and confused. Huh. Okay. 1 second. I'm missing something. Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry. Let me just quickly, before we do all of this, show this. I was confused because it has been a few months since I've done this, so we're there. Um, so there's a login button. Let me reopen this. That might let me re-show it. PlayFab editor extensions. So we end up here, and there's a down where that says create an account. This is what it opened up to by default. If you click login down here, that's actually going to take you over here, and then you can log in with your Microsoft account if that's what you're using. The other thing it was asking was to create an account. Read your bio for us joining late. Somewhere there's a bio. I'm not entirely sure where the best place for that is. But that, yeah, sorry. Okay, log in with Microsoft. Got it. Cool. Do that. Click. And then we're just going to hide this for now. What? Okay. A little confused. It's asking for a different account. So let's try this a different way. Okay. Well, let's go through this flow a different way. I'm missing something. Yeah. So instead, let's go and create an account and just use that instead. This way we can actually just get started entirely from scratch, and it will be the same flow that you would all follow if you were doing this. And I think that will have less issues. There's that. Cool. Let's go in, click the sign up button. Nope. Please don't ask again. All right, there we go. And then we do that. Sorry, that wasn't me talking to any of you. That was me talking to my computer because I do that. And then, yeah, we'll do that, I think, with a password that is short and I know. There we go. And they don't match. All right. This is the riveting stream content that I was hoping to create. All right. So I need to verify my email before doing this. But we've created an account. So we're almost there. Let me just do the verification quick. There we go. Okay, email address verified. So I should be able to log in now. This is more, I should have done this before stream in hindsight, because it would have been the same stuff. But there we go. So once you log in, you'll see this, and we can just install the SDK by clicking this button. And that should do everything else. While that's happening, I'm going to go and log in. Like this. Cool. So we've signed in. This is your brand new shiny PlayFab account, created with a brand new username and password, which is not what I had intended. So there we go. This is the default setup. We get a custom game quickly. We're not going to use any of this, I don't think. We might use our custom the game studio can stay. But I think we can just delete this. It's going to warn us that we're deleting everything, which means it's going to go away. So that should be fine. And so what we need to do is install the SDK, which is what we did by clicking that button. So installing the SDK gives us access to PlayFab. It lets us do all of these fun things that we're trying to do. Now that we see this, we have an SDK. We need to pick a title now. So we were creating a username and password. We were signing in. What we're doing here is creating a studio. So we will, or not that, we already have a studio. We're creating a title. So this is going to be called Spaceball. The working title that is not going to change. And so we can create the title here. And now we get this. And so I can come back here now and set my title. And we can just click and select the things that we want. This needs to refresh, which I forget how to do. But okay, so what it's doing is it's displaying my game, which is the default game that was created. We actually want to use a different one. So I click this. Should see it come up with something new in just a second. Okay. Sorry about that. Not authorized. Interesting. Oh, that's because it doesn't exist. That makes sense. So let's go and close this. See if that helps. And so we can jump into our window, PlayFab, editor extensions. That will give us this. Refresh. There we go. Okay, so refreshing our studios gives us our title, and then we can actually choose the game studio and the correct title. So all this is doing for us is actually configuring everything that we need in order to use PlayFab. So we need a studio and a title ID, which is actually going to tell it what we're actually working with. So what users are we talking about and things like that, as well as the title. So the actual game that we're talking about. Doesn't do a lot of good if you start sending your score to a game that is not yours or does not exist. So this is what's doing all of that. There's a developer secret. I will end up probably re-rolling that after these streams, just because it's a secret. But these are all of the fun things, and we can use this as a way to get more information. This is sort of where you go to manage PlayFab. We can actually now start interacting with PlayFab directly from our scripts. So we can turn this less interesting sunset scene into something that hopefully lets us actually create and use users in the cloud. And we'll get hopefully a whole bunch of really fun things as a result of that. So what we've done so far is connect Unity to this. So this is our dashboard where we can see everything going on. We can see players, and the title is probably the more interesting part. My personal favorite part of this whole thing is this play stream monitor, which is going to show everything, like interactions that are happening and where in the world they're happening. And so what this does is give you a way to see, like, did a user sign in? Where are people scoring goals? Things like that, because we can start sending events to PlayFab, and those will get rendered on this map based off of telemetry data, so like IP addresses and things like that. So we can actually kind of figure out who's playing things where, and all of that kind of just comes default. So let's actually start doing some fun things with this. Let's figure out how to do a login, because it's been a while for me. We've done the installation of the SDK. After logging in, do all of that, set our title. We've done that. Select the studio, title ID, downloads, done. There's also this option is for doing all of that without clicking the UI. So if you want to set everything manually, you can do that. And then we end up here. So let's go into the client quick start and we get all of that. This is where we already were. There we go. All right, make your first API call. So let's do this. What this is doing, I think, is logging in with a custom ID. So the custom ID is just going to be some custom random name. There's a lot of different ways you can sign in a user here. And PlayFab gives you lots of different options. Some of them are better than others and might fit your use case better than others. In this case, for example, we have we have a whole bunch of different options here. The custom ID that they're using here is giving you a custom known ID and signing in with that. So if you know this custom ID, you will be using the same account as everybody else that knows that ID. The difference is you can also use something like a device ID, which will automatically detect the device that is running the current game and use that. The downside with that option is if somebody ever switches their device, that device ID is going to change, which means all of their data is going to stick with that old thing. The other option you have is for a custom username and password. So we can just create a custom username and password and sign in with that. Or we can sign in using a variety of OAuth services. So we can either sign in using like a Microsoft account, or if you're using game services like Steam or Xbox, you can use those as well to provide credentials and sign in with that. So you can actually authenticate users using the platform native way of doing it. I am not familiar with console development and only slightly familiar with game development on mobile. So I don't know if I can share too much about that because I just don't know it. But there are options out there, and there might be even better resources than me. So that's that. We're going to just kind of follow this and see where we get, and then kind of tweak things to fit. What we're doing right here is just kind of trying to read and figure out and learn how all of this works. So yeah, that's the idea. So let's go and do this. Let's create a login. So we're getting asked to reload our solution because we imported an entire new package. So this needs to get reloaded. And so now we can end up here. Project loaded and ready to use. Perfect. Let's go and play around with our UI. We're also going to go and create a new canvas here. So we can actually interact with our UI. We're just going to create a really basic login screen. Again, I'm not a technical artist and I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to that. So we're going to try our best. So in this case, we're mostly just going to stack a whole bunch of things. So let's do that. Let's give it a margin on the all sides, I guess. Mostly just guessing. And then we will start adding text. So this will be our title. Spaceball. Okay, cool. Let's also do a vertical layout here. So we can do a vertical layout group, and that's going to stack everything vertically and automatically space everything so it all fits correctly. So we get that. And that means as I start adding elements, they're not going to overlap anymore. They're actually going to add on and append below them in a vertical list. So we can use that to kind of create this and then create our login experience, which... All right, let's make this more complicated than I wanted. Let's do a login sign in. We're going to focus a lot more on functionality here, I think, than actually getting this to look too nice, just because I'm figuring that out as we go. And then we can kind of make it look nice later. So we'll have login on the left and sign in on the right. I used a horizontal panel here. So we have a vertical panel for our main UI, and then in the middle there, we're going to have a horizontal panel so we can have login and create account side by side. So create account. And then if we ever need to rearrange them, we should just be able to click and drag and get them to automatically create new things. So let's go and create that using this input. Why did I forget where? There it is. Forgot what the input was. Perfect. This is going great. So let's do login. We're going to have a username and a password. And I'm just going to create this. We're not going to use all of this right now. Like you say, ugly and functional is sort of where we're starting. And then we can add on later. We're going to copy both of those into our create account. It's doing a thing, and I'm not entirely sure I understand why, but we'll figure it out in a bit. What is happening? Okay, everything is layered on top of itself. Is our horizontal group not horizontal grouping? Oh no. This is the part where it would be probably really helpful if I knew more about the UI system in Unity. But there we go. We have this. I'm going to add another button here for this. So we have our create account button. There's lots of different ways to do UIs in Unity. What I'm doing is sort of brute forcing it, just by clicking and dragging and designing it on the fly. You can also do like an XML based design or an immediate based UI. The immediate based UI is not ideal because what that means is that every time the UI changes, you have to redraw the entire UI, which is in UI systems is not great. So typically you'll see like some update notifications. So you know, we need to update this part of the screen and not redraw everything every frame. So there's different options. Let's see, we have our login button. Cool. We're going to completely ignore the password button for now. And I might even attach these together so they actually overlap and do the same thing. And instead of doing this, I'm changing my mind. We're going to do that, I think. And I think that makes a lot more sense. Doesn't make sense right now, but that's okay. We're going to throw these in a vertical group. And now we have two buttons with two optional text bits here. So I can provide my text here. So we have our username. Where's the placeholder? Do I have to set that in? This is one of those things where I don't use it enough that I remember how to use it. I just know the vagaries of how something works. So we're going to mostly do some hand waving here just to make it work. Our goal here is not necessarily to make things look super nice, because we're going to come back and design this and make this nice later. The idea is log in and create account to just kind of show how all of this works. Like this entire stream series is 12 hours to build a game and add cloud stuff to it. So we don't really have a whole bunch of time because games are hard. And so we're sort of trying to get as much done as we can. This is smaller than I want. And I don't know why. Is there a way to, let's see here. We're going to want to expand this, which isn't that. Content size fitter, that's not what I want. There's a thing here and I've forgotten layout. There we go. And we wanted to just make this actually bigger because this is too small. So let's go and change this to be a content size fitter. I'm not sure the best choice, so we're going to pick one and see what happens. And then we can figure it out from there. So we can actually set like preferred width equal to 300. And nothing happens. And I think that's because in here, we're forcing the children elements to expand here, which I don't think we want. I'm not sure that's what I'm looking for. And that's definitely not what I'm looking for. Upper center, sure. Actually, middle center is fine. But we have things that are the wrong size. Okay. This is really hard to see with what I'm doing. But what's actually going on here is we have a title and we have our login menu below it. What's happening is I've used a vertical layout group, which is automatically expanding things to do that. If I uncheck that, everything collapses again. Tick boxes and hope it fixes itself. That is not a bad idea. But what's happening is it's trying to expand everything so they're all the same height, which isn't actually what I want. I don't want the title to have the same height as the entire UI flow for logging in and creating an account. So we're trying to tweak that so that it does a little bit different. Okay, that's not it. Let's go in here and see if we can figure this out. So force children to expand with. All right, better idea. Let's move everything out of that panel. This should help us out here because now we no longer have things that are a fixed size. I can actually use this to provide a expanding width and like center it if I want, which should give us a little bit nicer look because I can do this and nothing. I was so sure that was going to work, and now we have this. That's great. Let's do. There we go. All right, we can just manually give these all the same width. Actually, weird. Okay, for what I was expecting, turning that on to automatically expand them so they would all fit, but that didn't happen. But there we go. there's our flow for actually logging in and creating accounts and doing all of that account management stuff. We're going to swap out the placeholder text with a username and a password. There we go. I'll figure out how to center this eventually. Actually, we're using explicit size, so I can actually just center it this way, I think. And get confused again. Interesting. Upper left. That might be what's causing the issue. There we go. Middle center, upper center, perfect. And then we can just raise the title up. Got there eventually. And I want to make sure this is centered like that, just so that it doesn't move. And then hopefully, that was risky. Everything stays together. So we can actually resize this and everything still stays centered. That's good. So let's get away from the UI stuff because I don't know what I'm doing. And we can do things that I'm a little bit more familiar with. So let's actually save our username and password to a login manager. That's what we're going to call this. So C# script, that's where that is. Login manager. Cool. So this is going to be a script that is going to compile, and then we're going to attach it to our UI, and then we can use that to track the username and password that we enter, and use that to log in with PlayFab. So in this case, we have our login manager, our start, and our update with a public string username and a public string password. We'll get to that in a bit. And then we can start updating all of that and doing the important bits. But we're not there yet. First, we need to actually do a little bit more UI stuff just to make sure these are actually synchronized to the correct thing. So we can do on value changed. Go and find that login manager and update the username, which isn't there. One second. Let me try that again. Did I save? Yes. Just double checking quickly that I haven't caused anything weird. I think we're all good. So let's go and try to actually plug this in. So we have our title. We have all of this. I want my username to update this login manager's username. Why can't I? What am I missing? I'm definitely missing something now. Okay, weird. So let's go and figure out why this isn't working. All right, we're getting past the parts that I really don't know into the parts that I'm probably going to know more about, but we're jogging through the forest of unknowns right now. There it is. All right, so we can tie our username to on value changed, so everything will be assigned there. This won't write things back, so we won't, if we change this manually, we're not going to see that, but we can handle that in a different way. And I don't even think we're going to do that. So I don't think that's that big of a concern, but then we can plug our password in there. So now if I start typing things, we'll get updates and their properties, which means that we'll actually be able to see when these are affected. We'll actually get invocations to our set and our get when that actually happens. So we'll actually have a callback for every time that they get changed inside of this function. So let's take a look at this. And so what's happening here is we need to double check. There's a whole bunch of static PlayFab types that get assigned. In this case, we have our title ID. This is going to check if that's actually set. And if not, it's going to set it to something explicit. So what this is saying is, please change the title ID. That title ID is in here, inside of PlayFab. It's actually in part of your URL, but it's also, I believe, inside of here. It's been a while since I've tried to find this. Not entirely sure. Where did I find this last time? There it is. Okay, so it's part of your URL. That's probably the fastest way to find it. Otherwise, you can get it from the Studios and Titles page, which is your main dashboard. This is just a really quick title and ID. Your game is going to have a different one if you use this. So you'll have a different ID that you can use and plug in and look at to kind of grab things and figure out what's going on. So if you are doing it manually, you will need to set this. Otherwise, it should automatically come in because if we look at our PlayFab extension, we already selected a title. And you can actually see the title ID is already specified here. We just get a little bit more of a nice UI because we actually get to see the title as the title of the game instead of just a series of random characters. But this is automatically set for us, so we can just rely on that. So the next thing that we're going to do is look here. So there's two things that are happening. The way PlayFab works is first you create a request, and then you invoke the API with that request. So this call is 2 lines. We can just copy them into our code because let's do that, and let's do login player ? So this is going to log in using the stuff that we provide. What's going to happen here, we'll call this begin player login, just so this will be a little bit nicer to talk about. So we're creating a login with custom ID request. The custom ID is just an explicit string. So we're just giving it some string. So the getting started guide custom ID with the option to create an account. If you don't provide this, what's going to happen is it's going to no longer create an account. It's just going to do nothing. So we're actually going to set this to false, I think. And then there's 2 callbacks that we can have: on login success and on login failure. When you're working with clients that are making requests to an external service, that could take a while, especially if you're on a mobile network. Maybe you're roaming or something else, or somebody's internet is just slow and you're trying to do something like download custom art assets or something over the internet. It's going to take a while. It's definitely not going to complete in a single frame. So what happens here is these are done asynchronously. So this request is going to fire off. We're going to say invoke this, and it's going to start, but it's not going to finish until one of these gets called. So we're going to know that something is happening, but we're not going to know if it's successful or not until we get that callback back, letting us know that something happened. So all we're doing is saying log in with the getting started guide. Do not create a new account if one exists, and then let me know what happens when the response happens. But this is, if you're working with PlayFab, this is sort of the general loop that you're going to get into, is creating a request, interacting with the API using that request, and then handling the callbacks in some way. This will be different if you're familiar with like async flows. You would be using some of the async stuff. that isn't typically how I've seen this done. It's usually just run this, use the callbacks, and then you can manage state in between. So we might want like a loading bar or some state thing. Let's even create that. So public, oh, not that. Public string current state string get set. Yeah, let's actually make this nicer. Before we do it too much, this will hopefully make this a little bit nice. So what this is going to do is we're going to create a current state string, which should be a string. And we're going to use that as sort of our backing field for our property. And we can do a getter, which is just going to return the current state string. As far as like AI stuff knowing PlayFab, maybe I'm not that familiar. That's way outside of things that I know, unfortunately. But maybe you can always try. But yeah, you'll find ways to make it work, I'm sure. So we have our current state string. This getter is just a shorthand for implementing the getter. It avoids us needing brackets. The setter doesn't need a return type. Is going to do current state string equals value, and then we're also going to create a public text object. Let's go and import text mesh pro. I don't know what that is, so we're going to get rid of it and use text mesh pro. No code style. Why? This is just how I've worked. I don't know. Usually like code styling is very personal, and the only time, like, especially when this is a project that I'm writing myself, my goal is more to write things in a way that's condensed and readable. I only have, because we're streaming, I only have about 20 lines total that can fit onto any page at one time, which is different than something else. Like I'm at 200 times. This is normally how I'd work, where the entire thing fits, but nobody can read this. And so the way I code in a stream is slightly different than the way I code normally. This is mostly just so that I can keep things condensed and make it so that it's easier to read. That's why there's less spaces between different things, and sort of why some of that happens. As far as code styling goes, use whatever makes sense. If there's plugins that you like that work with you, that's good. I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I personally don't like a lot of automation inside of my thing, especially things that automatically initiate a task for you. So anything that would automatically like change a word or do something like that, and do all of that. Not sure what code style means in this context. So there are tools for code styling there, and I'm not entirely sure if that's what the question is, that like it might be a specific plugin. But code styling is also how you structure your code. It's sort of the formatting that you use to actually make it look nice and readable, in a way that works. The common one is the spaces versus tabs debate. So whether you should use spaces or tabs. I think I use spaces in most of my code, and that's just a historic thing. But lots of those, like how everything works, whether your curly brackets are on a new line like this, versus at the end of a line, can all depend. In this case, I'm doing both, mostly because this is auto-generated and I like my functions to have the bracket on a new line, and then this, I'm not entirely sure why this is formatted like this. I did it. So yeah. Let's see here, text. And I'm looking for the UGUI Text Mesh Pro. So this will be our state text box, I guess. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to assign this. So this way I can actually write out state directly to a text box. That text equals the current state string. And that will just make it a little bit easier for us to manage all of that. So anytime I update this, it will automatically also change the UI. And so we can actually just do that here, which is our state string. Login state string. What did I call it? The current state string. The downside with this is I need to make sure that I'm always using this, the property, and not the field. The field won't automatically update things. It will just change things sneakily, which I do not want. So we want to set this equal to logging in. And I am on a fairly good internet connection, so this might not be as obvious as it would on like a slower internet connection, but we'll create that. And then this is our login. We're going to just create these two functions automatically. I would prefer the success before the failure, just as a matter of preference. So on login success, do this. Current state string equals logged in. And we actually, I think, get information about who logged in inside of this. We can look at this and see who they are. And so I think the PlayFab ID is going to be a string, but it's going to be their actual ID. It's not going to be their username. So if you want their username, that's in a different part, which I'm not entirely sure I remember where. Player profile dot display name. There we go. All right, making a mess. There we go. So that will do that and change it into who we logged in as and what their display name is. We didn't set a display name, so the display name and the username are different. So typically you would have a single consistent username over time, but your display name can be updated based off of whatever makes sense at the time. So you can actually change the display name without having to change the login. So they're like two separate fields, and we can show you where that is inside of the UI. And then inside of here, we can just say current state string equals login failed, and we could display the error, which, let's do another interpolated string. So that $sign again is a interpolated string. It means I can throw actual code into here. Error message, there we go. Okay, formatting got really weird there, but there we go. This gives us our success and failure. Now we just need to do this all over again, because we also need to create an account. So all of this will work. I'm also going to, just so we can see this happen regardless of what actually happens, regardless of how fast this goes, I'm going to add debug statements here that will also log this into the log so that I can track it there, not just tracking it as a UI element. But the other thing I want to do is quickly add a title to the bottom here, and this will be our status. So we'll just center that, do something like that, make this a bit wider. And this will just be our status. So we can actually display what's going on. And I'm going to remove the text for now, and we can actually update that, and it should automatically display for us as we do our login. So I can change this, drag it over here, and now assign it to our object so that as we go through this login flow, things actually happen. The other thing I need to do is configure our button. So when I click login, it actually tries to log in. So on click, I want to not do that. We want to go into our same login manager and do a begin login, which, did I make this public? It doesn't look like it. Let's go and do that. Begin player login, so public functions in order to access them from Unity's UI. So if we go here, now that this is public, we should actually be able to see that right there. So we have a begin player login. Whenever I click login, it should now trigger our login function. So we should actually go and try to log in to our cloud service and actually try to do the authentication bits. So the things that we're trying to do. So if I do test and test, that should probably be a password field. But if we do login here, you can see it switches to logging in and then user not found. We specifically said don't create a new account. So this doesn't go and create a new account for us. If we try to log in with this, we just get an error that the user account doesn't exist. So now let's create a flow for us to actually go and sign in correctly. And so what I'm going to do is copy this and do begin player account creation. And we're going to swap this out with a true. So now we can actually go and create our account. And I'm going to say creating account. This will also have the side effect of causing us to log in if the account already exists. So this flow will work the same. The only difference is now if I click register, which is what we're going to put this behind, it's actually going to go and create the account if it doesn't exist. So that prevents that from happening. And so we can use this to kind of just quickly create an account. This isn't the best way to do user accounts for every situation because there's no password, there's nothing is preventing you from using this. So anybody that knows that I'm creating something with my explicit string, they could use it as well. But if that's not something that you are concerned about, if that doesn't necessarily impact your use case, this is an option for that. So it's not necessarily this at this point. This is not a security feature. This isn't doing anything to keep players from accessing other players' data. What this is doing is giving us a way to actually create a cloud account that has some specific data associated with it. So let's go and create our account. Click this, go and look at our login manager and begin the player account creation. And now I can actually do things. So in this case, what I can actually do is click this button, create account. Null reference exception. That's not good. Object reference not set to an instance. Okay. Let's see here. Some HTTP callback is not happy with me. Let me go and see what that is. And if I've screwed something up somewhere. Because that's very possible. So we have our getting started, do all of that. And there's our results. All right, let's go and add some errors here and see what this is saying. What we're getting is some error with our HTTP request when we try to make the request. And I'm concerned because I don't think we're ever actually getting back to our client here. So we're not getting these callbacks either, I don't think. So let's see what happens here. Let's actually give these better names. Error was a better name than what I was using. Login, there we go. So you just get a little bit cleaner stuff going on here. And then I need to figure out why that's having issues. All right, so we do all of this. We can run this again, and hopefully this time things work. I'm not sure where a native collection has not been disposed. So we have some memory leaks somewhere that I've caused, which probably isn't ideal, but let's go and create this. So we have two different things we can click. We can click login. Oh, that's causing issues too. I think the same issues. Interesting. Let me restart Unity and see if this changes anything. Because I'm not entirely sure what's going on. We're getting weird HTTP client errors, and I don't actually know. I've never seen that before, so I don't know how to fix it. So I'm hoping this addresses it. We were getting some weird things popping up, and so I'm wondering if that was causing it. Otherwise, I don't know. So let's try running this again. What are we trying to accomplish? Could always attach the debugger. That's a good point. That's probably the next step we should try. So what we're trying to do is we're building an online game. We've already created the game. I can show that in just a second. Let's see if this works. No. Okay. We'll attach a debugger in just a second and then do that. But since somebody asked what we're building, let's switch to our other scene. So here is what we've been building so far. This is what we currently have. So we've created this, I've been calling it Spaceball. It's basically soccer / football in space with rocket ships. And so you have the ball moving around, which is like that gear thing. And then teams of 3 try to automatically score goals. So you have the blue and the red team, and they try to score. What we're trying to do is add cloud services to this so we can track player goals and player stats over the time that they play the game. And also kind of just use it to make our game hopefully a little bit better. There's some things that would be kind of nice to be able to tweak over time, like how fast everything moves, for example. Like right now, I've been kind of trying to play around and see if I add a little bit more drag or if I make players a little bit faster or slower, or the ball maybe have like more friction. Things like that are things that we might be able to tweak by adding cloud services. And so that's sort of what we're trying to do now, is add a user account so that users have their own account assigned to them, and then use that to attach to how a user plays the game. So that's sort of what we've been working on. Is we've built this yesterday. So if you missed the stream, there's VODs available for watching how we got to this point. And then now today we're going through and trying to add cloud stuff to this so that the ship that is currently automatically flying around, because I attached an AI to it, how we can make that do other things. So what we'd like to do is have that ship track goals or track other things that we add to this, we probably want to add a few other mechanics to the game to make it a little bit more interesting, because right now it's just kind of everything just running into each other. But we could add a little bit more to make that more fun. So that's what we're doing, and trying to do. Yeah, that's that. So let's jump back here to the less interesting UI based stuff, and see what's going on. Because this doesn't work, and we get some sort of null pointer at line 43. Am I looking at the right thing? So the login manager line 43. Oh, I was misreading this. We don't have any of this stuff. That's why we're getting this. I bet I can fix this by doing that. The reason I was so confused is because if you get if the API fails, you'll get a failure, and it will report some sort of error back to you. We weren't even getting that, so we were getting an error somewhere else, and I had looked at the stack trace a little bit too quickly. What we're actually getting is a error at line 43 of a null reference exception, because I had this entire chain and was trying to parse it out, and we weren't getting some of that information, so we were getting nothing. Online streamed coding, it's a thing. So let's do like the PlayFab ID. So this will just give us the ID of the player, which is less interesting, but it'll give us something, and not error out, which is important. Let's try this again. Actually, that means that this was probably working. So if I go into here, we have a unique user now. Somebody exists, because my request to create something actually worked. We can also see all the different API calls that are happening with our game over time. So like writing events, doing all of this different stuff. Let's open up the play stream monitor, and we should, if I actually do my login, do this. We logged in as string of characters, which is not super interesting. But you can see a whole bunch of things happened. You can see I logged in, started a session. So I logged in and started the play session. You can see where I logged in at. So in this case, Oakland. And you can see some of the device stuff and things like that. So you can actually see a little bit more about who's playing your game. So if you have a game that's going across multiple different platforms, or maybe has like a web version and a e version, this gives you a way to see things like logins and when somebody starts playing, which is useful because now you actually know that you don't just have a download number. You don't just have a number of how many people downloaded your game and then didn't play it, or are still playing it a year after downloading it. Because otherwise, if your only metric is people downloading your game, that's really hard to track. And so the really cool thing, the thing that I really love about this, is it gives you all that information, and you can kind of use that to understand how things work. So here we go. Whole bunch of fun things. You can see what version of Unity I'm playing with. So if we are changing different things, you can do all of that. And you can also see fun things about like what kind of processor and what kind of graphics card I'm using, things like that. And kind of use that to understand, like, if somebody's reporting an error now, I know that it's happening on an AMD CPU with a NVIDIA graphics card at this specific version level and this specific driver level. And so it gives you lots of extra information for like tracking down why that weird thing happens at that specific point. So anyway, there's that. It works. So we should also, I think, if I click this login here, we should see a little user icon pop up. I have this set to very slow or very quickly get rid of things, so fade out after 2 seconds. Let's do 60 seconds, I think. And I think I can log in again. And if we go back here, you can actually see on the map what happened and where. So you can actually kind of like get a somewhat live view of like things that are happening. Is PlayFab platform agnostic? In other words, could I use the same API calls with jQuery, for instance, rather than from Unity? So all of the PlayFab stuff that I'm doing is here. Let's actually take a look at this because we have this request here. This login with custom ID request is just a JSON blob that we're actually sending over a message, like an HTTP request. So anything that you have that supports HTTP requests, you can add support for it. Whether it has whether there's actually a supported SDK for it is going to depend. But it's all just API calls behind the scenes. So I think there's like a current work in progress in like a Godot version, which I don't think is officially supported in any capacity. It's not something that I'm really familiar with. I don't usually work with Godot. But it is something where you can just add that support if you know what's going on. So there's that. One thing about since people are bringing it up, like the geolocation stuff is based off of things like IP address. So that's going to tell you more about general where ISPs are located and not necessarily actual telemetry data, because this computer doesn't even have GPS attached to it. That's not where that's coming from. It's just giving you general broad information. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, I work in San Francisco as a cloud advocate. So out of the Microsoft Reactor there. So you can come to events and we can chat there if you're interested. But there's all of that. And there we go. Quick login requests with custom stuff. Now, what is the Microsoft Reactor? So the Microsoft Reactors are community spaces that we have in a not quite Fusion Power. It's that, but for your communities, like tech communities around you. So what it does is the Microsoft Reactors are community spaces for community events in specific areas. So you can use that as a way to connect with different communities in the tech space. So for example, we have a big game developer community and the San Francisco Reactor. Other reactors located around the world have different communities that work with them as well. So there are spaces that are available largely to the community that you can use and kind of explore there, and come and meet other fellow developers and learn a little bit more about that. So if you're only familiar with the Microsoft Reactor through some of our YouTube stuff, we also have in-person spaces that you can come to and interact with. The spaces are free, so you can come to these events and learn about whatever's interesting. Not always Microsoft related stuff. So they're Microsoft spaces, but they are available to the community to use. So you might find other tech groups using them to share awesome, cool stuff that they're doing. So they're sort of located in different places around the world. We have ones in San Francisco, which is the one that I work out of. We also have one in New York and Redmond, one in Toronto, one in Sao Paulo, I believe, one in Sydney, Australia, one in China and India, one in Stockholm, Sweden, one in the Middle East. I'm not entirely sure where off the top of my head, and then one in London. So they're in different places, usually like larger tech places, and they're there for you. So that's sort of what I do. But yeah, I think, yeah, Corey works out of the Stockholm location. So go say hi. But we do all sorts of fun things. Each of our locations, sort of the cool thing about like what I do is just 600 kilometers. That's a little bit of a drive. But like the cool thing is we kind of tune what's happening there based around what the communities are. So for example, in San Francisco, we do lots of things around Kubernetes and around cloud native stuff. And different things happen in, different things. We also do like lots of native language type content. So we'll target for different things. So like Spanish content, for example. Lots of fun different things. I would recommend checking it out. We try to make the spaces as welcoming as possible. So if you show up and say hi. Otherwise, you can always catch a lot of our stuff online inside of different things. Native languages in C++. Not quite. We do cover lots of different languages. So because our focus is more region specific, trying to work in like San Francisco or New York or Toronto, we will cover lots, like a breadth of different stuff. My background is mostly like cloud native and that stuff, lots of C# as well. And so that's how this kind of came about, is I've done lots of like indie development and game development stuff. So now we're talking about game development and cloud stuff and C# all simultaneously. I also really love talking about GitHub stuff, so we'll probably throw in some GitHub sometime throughout the next 6 hours of these streams, just so we can kind of talk a little bit about that too, because there's lots of really fun things. And I've been wanting to play with Game CI, which they added a option for GitHub, so you can actually use this to build your Unity games inside of a GitHub action. And I was really thinking like we could take this game and ship it as a GitHub page that's built automatically anytime anything changes. That's sort of where I would like to get this, as just sort of like a really cool proof of concept of how that all works. I don't know how to use this tool though. I've never used it before. So if we get everything else done that I want to get done, this is like the thing we'll be looking at the end. But if you're interested in like figuring out how to do CI stuff with Unity, or this supports other game engines as well, you can do that. It's just an open source tool for that. So anyway, there's all of that. We were talking about logging in, because all we've done so far is make it so that I can log in with an explicit username. And that's created this user, which has all of this fun stuff. You can see there's a whole bunch of extra information here that we are not using right now. Things like contact emails, display names, even avatars. So if you want to assign an avatar to your user, this gives you a way to do that. All sorts of fun things. We have a username and a login, which we did not set. So there's no way to actually do that. We also have identities, which is how you can actually sign in with different things. So in this case, custom IDs. So these would be the device IDs that I had talked about. So for example, an Android device ID. By giving this, it means that if you try to access from a specific device with that ID, so matching these specific specs, it's actually going to understand that that's you, and use that to actually figure that out. Whether you want to use that or not can depend. The advantage of doing something like this, having a device ID, and you don't need to manually add this for every user, you can detect and do this automatically. But the advantage of doing this is if you're building a mobile game and somebody downloads your app, and then you just have a big wall that says log in to play, that can make people go away. Instead, you might want people to play through like the first 5 levels and then say, hey, do you want to sign in to maintain your progress? And so because you use the device ID, you still have all of the same stats. They didn't lose anything because it's all still attached to that device ID and still created and synchronized to the cloud. But now they can add they can link a new account later and everything will still work. So that's how that works. Yeah. So let's go and try some other things. What have I done? This. Let's go and make this custom. So we can now use our username here. Let's turn this into an interpolated string and use our username. Oops. Like that. So get all that. And so creating our account, something like this. And this way we actually have the ability to see what's going on. We can actually use this to log in and create different accounts. So this is sort of the next step in this. We were just using an explicit string, so everybody who used this would sign in with the same thing. Now, we should be able to start this again and provide any text string we want. So let's do just test login. User was not found because we tried to sign in with a user that doesn't exist. And then we get some debug information about that. Instead, let's create the account and we get a different ID. You can see the ID is already different. It no longer starts with 2 E's. And if I go back here now and go and look at our players, we'll have 2. So if I go and search for the players, we now have the 2 players that we've created so far. This one was created relatively recently. And we now have this with a custom ID of test. So we can use this to just create those custom things. And now we can get multiple accounts going. This is still using custom IDs though, which isn't really what I want to use. I want a username and password. So I want to set up this so that we're actually being able to log in with a custom username and password. I'm not going to set up all of the OAuth stuff to link additional services. That takes more time. And I don't really know how to do it. So unless people want me to spend 2 hours trying to figure it out, it's probably best we don't. So there's that. But I haven't talked about any of these options up here yet. And there's a lot. So we might get some chances to dive into some of this stuff. I've done other previous videos on PlayFab before. If you want something that's more condensed and less streamy, I do have things where it's a little bit more rehearsed, going through how some of this stuff works, like creating friends lists and high scores lists, and that kind of stuff. But we're just going to start adding that over time over the next 2 hours. So if there's anything specifically in here, among all of these fun things that people are seeing and like curious about, let me know in chat and we can dive into those. This isn't like a strongly structured stream, so we can do whatever's most interesting to all of you. That's why I'm here. So for now, we're going to try to make this so that I can log in with a username and password instead of this. So let's go and do that. Let's figure out how to do that. So we signed in with a custom ID. Cool. The other options are things like logging in with Android device ID. I've never tried this. Is this? Yeah. Oh, somebody was asking about how to do this from like jQuery or something like that. All of the PlayFab API is documented here. So this is the PlayFab REST API, and you can just use this. Let me just post a link. What this is all of the APIs for everything you can do, listed with the requests and where they're located and what you need to send to them in order to make that work. So we have everything here. I moved away from what I was looking at, but if we go back here with like logging in, the entire thing is documented here. And the request that we're making, if we go and log in with custom ID, if we look at our request body, we have a few things. Some things are filled in automatically by the Unity PlayFab SDK, things like the title ID. But we have create account, which is a Boolean. If I go and look at my code, we have create account, which is a Boolean. So you can kind of figure out what you need and what expected and how it's going to work just by looking at the REST API and figuring out how all that works. And because this is all just the REST API, this is how every engine is going to end up integrating with this. I've not used like the Unreal SDK, for example, but this is the contract. That's sort of how APIs end up working. They're a contract between you and some online service somewhere. So in this case, this is how you communicate with PlayFab. So we have the custom ID, which is also just right there. So you can figure out how all of that works, and it all should just match. And if there's something else in here, like a custom tag that we want to add, then we can do that. But it's all there. And then we just have how to handle the errors, and you can see what comes back. And these are our results from our API. So if we want to look at this and see what that user is doing, then we can figure that out here. Yeah, hopefully that's interesting. Are you going to do a login option for using a Microsoft or Google account they already have? I am not planning on that just because I don't know how. It's not something I've worked with. OAuth is complicated, and two, there's a lot going on with OAuth that I don't know enough about to play with on stream. With authentication, like because if I was be testing like a login with a Microsoft or another account, I'd be signing in with something and have to actually provide that actual flow and go through authenticating with my user. I would be concerned that I would end up leaking something related to that. And so I'm less comfortable doing that on stream when I do not know how to do it to begin with. So it's probably something that I'll do it will end up doing in like a video sometime, like a pre-recorded video somewhere. And then sharing that out if that's helpful. If that's something you would like to see, like if it would be helpful to see how to do authentication with somebody else's like Google account, or what else is here, Xbox account or something like that. If that would be useful, let me know in chat. Just like say yeah, and then I can know that there's interest and try to figure out how to do that, and we can structure something that will show how to do that. But right now, just for this, we're not going to do that. just because I don't quite know. Okay, definitely cool. I'll try to do that then and see how that works, and try to figure out how to document that best. Because I'm curious as well. That's probably how I would want to log in. Overall, I don't like just creating custom things, especially on a phone. Typing in passwords and things is not always super easy. So just being able to click like log in with your account that's already authenticated on your phone, that's great. So there are a bunch here. Some of these all work differently that I'm not entirely sure how. They'll detect like Steam, for example, I think gives you an authentication. I've never shipped a game on Steam, so I don't quite know. But some of these will actually give you that authentication bits as part of launching the game. I just don't quite know how that works. We're going to mostly focus, I think, on logging in with PlayFab, which would be creating our own custom username and password. So we can provide a username and password for this and use that to create our account. And I think that's how this works. Let's go and make sure I'm not completely off the rails here. But I think there's also a way to register a PlayFab user. That's what I'm missing. So we're going to be working with these two things. And in this case, I'm not even looking at any specific documentation for these. I'm looking at the REST APIs. That's sort of where I'm focusing. And we can actually find what we're looking for by using the names of everything from the REST APIs. Lots of this will just be available that way. And then we can figure out what's supposed to show up here using this. So we have our password and username. We've already set up the UI to do that. So let's go and set that up. So account creation, let's start with login. This will break initially, but we can actually just start with this and then even kind of create a custom account directly from the PlayFab UI if we want, and work with all of that. The cool thing with this is you do have this entire PlayFab UI, and you can go in here and change things. So if you want to do different things or create like test accounts with specific parameters, or like currency or whatever setup, you can do that. So it gives you some flexibility to kind of play around that way. We're going to create this with a new request. And we want to provide a username of our username, a password of our password, and I think that's everything. This is a login though, so that's not where that goes. This is the wrong request for this, because this is going to actually register our user, which I don't think we want to do. Instead, we want to sign in. So let's go and grab that instead. And this is called login with PlayFab. There we go. So there's our request. We're just going to slowly start commenting things out as we move through this. So we're doing that. And then we have our PlayFab client API dot login with PlayFab. So this is the same name. So login with PlayFab is the same name. We just tacked on request at the end there so that we could actually make that request. So let's do that on login success and on login failure. So we can just reuse those same callbacks for this. And we're going to comment that out. We can leave that current state updater right there. And I think we should be able to rerun this now. And I think this is going to throw an error, like different types of errors now if I run this. Invalid input parameters, perfect. So our API calls are failing. So if I provide test and test, passwords must be between 6 and 100 characters. That might be really hard to see. That's going to be behind my camera. But if I pull this up, there we go. So there's certain requirements for passwords between 6 and 100 characters for this. So in this case, we can't just use test as our password. We can use testing. And then we can log in with this. And now we get user not found because our user does not exist. So what we need to do is go and create an account. So let's do that. You can go into players and create a new player. Oh, that's the custom ID. Let's create. I haven't done this before, so we're testing. But if we do this, and then we should be able to give it a username. I might be mistaken. Right. Not entirely sure. I've never done this before, so yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave that for now, and let's go and try to create our player the other way. So instead of doing this, let's go down here And we're going to create another request for a new register PlayFab user request with the custom, or the username rather, of our username, the password of our password, and so on. We can also require an email address if we would like to. We can turn on requiring an email address. So if you want to do that, that's a thing. But in this case, I don't think we need it. And keep in mind, it has been a number of months since I've written this, and I'm writing it from my head. And that isn't the most reliable way to do this. But we can explore PlayFab user. And so this is going to have different results. It's going to have a different callback with the register result rather than the login result, because we're just registering our user of object. And I think this should sign you in as well, if I'm remembering correctly. So we can do this dot register, and we'll see what happens. Account created for that. And in this case, we're going to just kind of display these usernames or the tokens directly. That should be fine. And then we can restart this and see if I remember this. So if I create an account, both username and email are required unless specified. Okay, that makes sense. So we need a username and an email when registering, unless I turn that off by disabling require both username and email. And I guess we should do that. B2C for accounts. I'm not sure I know what that is. So maybe, what does B2C mean? Right. I'm not sure. Business to customer. That's not something I'm very familiar with. So auth as a whole is not something that I'm very familiar with. So when we talk about like Azure Active Directory or OAuth or other things like that, it's not a place that I have worked with very often. So I'm not entirely familiar. So I'm not sure I can answer, and I also don't know how PlayFab implements their PlayFab authentication. I don't know how that works. But PlayFab itself is going to give you a whole bunch of different things, and the login with PlayFab, as far as I'm using it, I'm not touching Azure as part of this. So there's no Azure services that I need to spin up or own or manage as part of this. By using PlayFab, all of that gets managed here. And so if I wanted, I think you might be able to use one of the other authentication ways to do that. I don't know. I'm sorry. So hopefully that's helpful. No worries. If you come in late, these streams are longer than I think we've done normally, especially for just like working on one thing. And so I'm expecting people to like come in when convenient and then disappear when not. So please ask questions about things that you see and are curious about or don't understand. Maybe you missed like the previous day or whatever. It's intended for us to be able to like double back and recover things that people get up to speed, and we get to kind of turn this entire project towards the things that people are interested in, so that we can kind of learn that part together. This looks like Azure DevOps. I could see that. Yeah. So this is actually PlayFab, which is like a game development cloud tool. So you can create online resources in the cloud that you can then connect to your video games. That's sort of what we're working with. Yeah. Let's see here. Yes. So PlayFab is part of the Microsoft Cloud stuff. It's part of our gaming services thing. Using PlayFab right now, I think it goes through its own little portal, but it is linked to Azure and things like that. And it has direct integrations with things like Azure Functions. So if you want custom functions directly linked to your game, you can integrate that really easily using like Azure Functions. So there's lots of really fun ways to kind of connect all of that. But if you're interested in trying to do like cloud stuff, this can be a really approachable way of doing it rather than like trying to roll your own authentication, for example, because that seems hard and I'm not entirely sure the best way to do it. But here, PlayFab gives us a solution that we can use. So, oops, trying to save a web page. That's not going to work. Cool. So what have we done? We have signed in. Right now we require a username and a password. Yeah. So PlayFab gives you a lot of like the common services that you would use for gaming. So if you want to manage like an economy and have like different currencies that the player can own and manage over an account, you can do that. You can just go into economy and create a currency. Do things like that. You can also add things like online items. If you create an account, it has a sample game pre-created for you, and you can use that to build and create all sorts of fun things. Other things are like online leaderboards, so you can track different scores, even host like tournaments. So I have like a monthly tournament of our game is like a online space soccer or football, depending on where you live. And so you can have like a monthly tournament that gives out like a free item or something at the end of every month to whoever scored the most goals. Something like that, if you want to. It can also do things like multiplayer. That's my limit of knowledge there, unfortunately. I don't know anything more about the multiplayer stuff. That's been a area that I've been intending to look in, but it would take a lot of time and I just haven't had it. Yeah, there's lots of fun things you can manage, like friends lists and things like that, all here without having to go and like build your own services for this. So it's really, really neat. There's SDKs for Unity and for Unreal, and a few community tools as well for other engines, depending on what you use. Otherwise, it's all available over REST. So you can, if you know how to do that, then it's there. But yeah. I think it's really cool, and I think it sounds like you do too. So yeah, that's why we're doing this, because it's fun and really cool. And so little background. My experience with game development is not like AAA. It's not big games. It's like small indie games with handfuls of users and people playing them. And there's lots of things that you can get from connecting your game to the cloud that are really useful as part of that. You can use this as a way to figure out like where walls exist in your game that you wouldn't know just from getting a download number. You can also figure out like, are people still playing this? Does an update make sense? Or maybe you even just want to tweak a setting, like make a player jump a little bit higher or make enemies spawn with a little bit more health or something like that. You could tweak that online and ship it out to players without them ever having to download a new client to play it with. And that can be really helpful as like an indie developer where there is no like automated update system, where that isn't really a thing. And so it can just be a really nice way to do that. So I think it's cool. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, if you have other questions, there's certain things that I know about this, and there's other things that I don't. If I don't know about it, we can dive into it and learn together. That's what this stream is intended as a way for us to dive in and learn things together over the course of like a more involved project. We're actually building something entirely from scratch rather than having like a rehearsed demo that I know how it works. Because I don't really know where this is going to end at the end of this, but that's what we're hoping for. So hopefully in the next 2 hours, we've created user logins. What I'd like to do now is actually make it so that I can track goals scored by different teams. And I might even want to track different things. Yeah, another really cool thing is like, I created this account live during this stream because I was getting confused. But like, I haven't provided a credit card or anything. So this is accessible for you to go and grab and use. This project should end up on GitHub, hopefully by the end of this. I was talking really quickly earlier about game CI. One of the things that I really wanted to check out with this is GitHub Actions and using game CI to build our Unity game directly inside of like a GitHub Action, so we can actually build the game. Build the game that way, rather than having to like manually build on some developer's machine and hope it works. We can actually build something in CI and use that. So this is a community toolkit for building your thing in different places. So we can use like this as a way to go and create a custom workflow and then ship our game, hopefully. That's what I would like to do. Whether we have time to actually dive into that today or tomorrow, I don't know. But yeah, I think that'd be really cool, because I think CI/CD and testing is something, especially with indie developers and smaller developers, is something that I don't see used very often, and I think could be really useful. Even GitHub and Git is not all that interesting. Yeah, I've talked for a long time. So let's go and actually get some work done. So we have our users. I have 3 now because I created one, right? Okay, so there's that. We require a username and an email. I can turn that off, I suppose, or I can add an email. There is no email verification to my knowledge. So it's not going to actually validate that the email is an actual email that we can send mail to. Do we need to deploy any infrastructure? No. If you want, so let me see here. Automation, cloud scripts. If you want to use cloud scripts, this uses Azure functions usually. So you would give it the name of the function that you're going to invoke. And then what you can do is you can have like certain events, like a user logging in or a user scoring a goal, call in a function inside of your thing, inside of your cloud game. And so you can kind of prevent users from having direct access to invoking functions. You can control it all on the server side, so there's less exploitation possible. That, if you were trying to manage like Azure functions, that would require a little bit of bicep or ARM or something. But here we just created a title in a studio. So like if you're getting started, you'll start here. You just create a studio named whatever it is that you want to do. Does it have pricing tiers to scale with my game? Yes. Let me go and find that. That's not gonna get me where I want. But yeah, so pricing is going to scale with this. You can actually see based off of what we've done. Here's my bill. There's nothing here. But let me go and find this. So you go to PlayFab. There's a pricing option up here. I would look here. Up to 100,000 users, it's free. So you can use this as a way to like tinker with and explore. Or if you're building smaller games, like I don't think you'd ever exceed that. So you can use that as kind of a way to do that. Certain features like the multiplayer stuff, I believe, is going to require a little bit more, and it's going to have different limits. So this is saying multiplayer servers are compute limited to like 750 hours. But like small indie games, I have never exceeded the free tier. So maybe if you're building something, but also the cool thing is it's priced based off of scale. So if you're trying to sell your game or do something like that, you're going to get different things. Like you hopefully you have some revenue from that, and you can use that to kind of cover this. But yeah, that's how that works. As far as more advanced pricing tiers and what that looks like, I'm not entirely sure, because I've never even given PlayFab a credit card. So that's been my experience with it. So yeah, I thought it was really cool. So yeah, let's go and dive into this here. We don't need to deal with that. Cool. So here's everything that we've done so far. You can see when I started talking, doing all of that, we ended up with like this big drop of no longer actually getting anything done, but that's cool. That's perfect. So we need to figure out, we have a decision to make really of, do we want to require a email or not? And since I actually want people to, like, I want this to be something that I can hand out to all of you and you can all play it, I think I'm actually going to remove that requirement. So require both username and email is false. I think there might be a server-side setting for this that I might need to check, but I don't remember. So we'll see. So let's run this. We'll get a different error if there's a server-side thing that needs to be set, and we can go and find that, but we can create our testing user. Go and create the account. And there we go. Account created. Here we go. So now if I go and look, I should now have 4 players. And so now you'll see different icons here, and this is showing different types of users that are created. So this one is using PlayFab as a way to authenticate. So it's got the little PlayFab icon. And I can sign in here. And now see we have our PlayFab username. And I can even go and give them an email address. Or change the password. If I need to like manually go in here and change the password, I can do that. We also no longer have any linked accounts. They're not tied to any automated anything. So there's no special stuff to required for this. Whereas if I go back to my other, let's go here, go back to my other players and search here, we'll see all this other fun stuff. If I look at this, these other users have custom IDs assigned to them. So there's a difference there. Whereas this user doesn't have that. It also means you can assign multiple identities to a single account. So somebody could link their Facebook account to this account, and they could sign in with either their PlayFab username and password, or use one of their linked identities to do that as well. So there's different options there. Yeah, we have all that. We have when the account was created, when they last logged in, fun information like that. You can use that to kind of figure out when people are joining, how long they're playing. And there's a whole bunch of other ways to like analyze your data and build reports too. So if you're trying to actually track this as more than just curiosity, if you actually want to see like how many new accounts are created every week, you can create a report for that, which can be kind of a handy thing to like see if you have new people coming in, or just existing players continuing to play, or if both of those are going down, maybe the game is reaching its end of life, or you should do something else to bring players back. Things like that are fun information that you can use because you have it. So that would all be shown here, I think. This is a feature that I've played less with, so I'm not as familiar with how all of this works. But we can do, let's see here. Daily overview report. I don't even, data. All right. This might be weird too, because this account has existed for a total of 2 hours at this point. Certain things just may not have the time to actually exist. But we have things like event details showing when things happened. Really cool other things we get are things like client focus changes. So when did that happen? Let's see, we created our entity. Player created, player linked account, entity created. We did log in. Okay. But then I kept playing. Cool. Sorry, trying to figure out this because we get some interesting information here. Tripping over my words. But things like the client focus are what happens when you do what I just did. Where you take a running game and put it in the background. So the game is still running, but now it's in the background. So it's no longer in a focus state. This can be a handy thing to is somebody just launching it and then doing something else and not really playing. That could be something that you could detect with this. Cool. I think that's that. And I'm pretty sure we've signed in. So I'm going to add another button here. It's going to be like a public void check login ? Because we should be able to do a PlayFab client API. I forget the name of this, so we might have to do some searching. I don't think this is right. Yeah. PlayFab API settings. Nope. All right. We may have to go and ask the docs. So what I'm looking for is there's actually ways to pull out static information. Hi, I'm a student learning game development. I think your vids are really helpful and amazing. Thank you. If you have other questions about learning or doing anything like that, feel free to ask them. Happy to answer them. That's what this stream is for, is to kind of answer questions and hopefully build a game along the way. But I'm much more interested in kind of helping all of you learn and get excited about all of this cool stuff than it is about finishing the game. I can finish the game later. It's not going to go anywhere. But yeah, we can take those detours and answer questions. So if you have questions, let me know. Let's see here. PlayFab settings. I think this is what I want, because this is going to have our information about our current player. And I think the thing that I want, I'm not entirely sure, because it's been a while since I've used this, so I'm not entirely sure the correct way to do this. But I think the static player is what we want here. And we want to debug.log some interpolated string of all of this. And I can actually write this out to our current state string as well. I think, let's grab that's not right. I want the username. I forget how to get that. All right. Oh, PlayFab ID, client session ticket. Okay. Let's try this and see what we get. I think the static player is keeping track of some information for us. It's helping us track what's actually happening. And so we can actually use this as a way to figure out what the current state is. Because when I actually invoke some of this information, PlayFab does do some smart things for us and kind of remember certain static information. Like if we're logging in with a user, you just make a REST request, you're just sending data back and forth. Ideally, you want to keep things like the authentication tokens to make sure you can stay signed in as that user. That is kept track of by the SDK. And this is, I believe, how it's tracked. But what I want to do is just check if we're logged in. And if we are, I want to send us to our game. And then we should be able to actually start playing as our player. So that's the next thing that I would like to do. So let's restart this. And if we log in, I didn't give it a button to actually do what I want. Let's do that, so that this actually works. Test login ? And then this is going to invoke that what I call it, check login function, just to make sure that we're actually logged in. Text is inside of the button. All right, we're back to the UI stuff, and I'm really bad at the UI stuff. Check login. All right, so what that check login button is going to do is just validate the state, because it's going to look at our current state of our current playing thing and see what happens. So I do this, we're not logged in. But if I go and check this and log in, we logged in, and then check and we get true. I can also create a new account. So let's do tester, same password, because we're just testing these things. So let's go and create our account. We created our account. We can also check if we're logged in still, and we are. I should have printed out who was logged in. So let's try that again and create another account, I guess. So we can do testing and testing and go and create our account and then check the login. So after we register, we are logged in. All of that stuff gets saved. That's what this is validating, and just making sure all of that works. And then from here, we should be able to send the user into the game. And then we can check if they're logged in, then we can actually play the game. If not, we want to probably send them back to this page so that they can log in and do all that normal stuff. This could be made much better. I'm just doing this quickly because it's a stream and this part is not interesting. At least I don't like watching this kind of stuff. So I'm making some assumptions there, but yeah. So we can get rid of this after our login and create login stuff. Let's go and I think awesome. I'm glad what we're doing is helpful. That's super cool to hear. That always makes my day. Whenever somebody shows up and says they enjoyed a video or saw a video and we're like, oh yeah, I use that. That's the best. That's why I do this, is because it's just super fun. You really like the rippling effect and echolocating. Yeah, that one's really fun. I don't know if I ever showed this in a video, but I actually tied that effect together to a microphone. So you could actually talk into your microphone and see around you using that effect because everything else is black. It was a really interesting game mechanic. It just it hurt my head, so I stopped. But yeah, I really enjoyed working on that effect. That was a lot of fun. Okay. After we've signed in, let's go and send the user to let's start game, I think. So once you sign in, I think we can just send you over and start the game. And we'll do this. For now, I'm not going to very cleanly handle logging in or not. We just have that, but we can send people to our login experience. And then we want to do a scene manager and load the scene. And I think just load scene will be fine. We don't need to deal too much with all the async stuff, and we're gonna just hard code that as 1. That won't be a problem in the future. So what we can do here is go into our build settings. We want to add our current scene and the other sample scene. I should rename this to something else. Like 3v3 game. Cool. So every scene in Unity gets its own ID. So we have 0 and 1. These are IDs we can use to actually send things different places. Just because they're in the build settings doesn't mean they don't affect your current editor. They do. So this gives us a nice way to use like IDs to send things around. It also means I can change that later and kind of manipulate where things are going without having to go and like rename things and do weird stuff. So we can use this, and what this means is that now I can start the game on a login success. So how this works is we either create an account or log in, and then I can just start the game. And that's just going to go and load our scene for the actual game. I think that means we'll never see this, but it does get logged out as part of that. So it goes to a debug message. So it's there. But at least this gives us a way to kind of log in and do certain things. And yeah, so we have player login, account creation. Checking login isn't actually used anymore. So I think we can get rid of that. And then our login successes both do the same thing. They just update with a slightly different piece of information and then go to start game. Awesome. I'm glad the information is helpful. That's super awesome to hear. Cool. And so hopefully this will log us in. I'm also going to create a script and attach it to everything. Let's see here. PlayFab. And this is just going to be a login checker. And all this is going to do is just log out if we're logged in or not. And if we are or are not, and we require login, so public bool require login. If a login is required and we don't get it, we're going to send us back to whatever scene it is that we were at. So in this case, we have our update. We're not going to do anything there. And then in our start, we're just going to say var is logged in is equal to the PlayFab settings dot our static player is client logged in. So this will check if we're currently logged in with a player. If we are, if require login, oh, it was even suggesting the right thing and not logged in, then use the wrong thing. There we go. Right, so if we're not logged in and we require a login, not in, but login is required, then we can send the player back to the start of the game. So scene manager dot load scene. And so all this is going to do is just send the player back to that scene just to make sure that they're logged in. We could also insert this check inside of the thing that's actually going to cause the transition, but this is just there for safety, so you can't play the game without being logged in. Who you're logged in as is not checked. So if you use like a device ID or something, or if we support device IDs eventually, that would work here. We just want some sort of authenticated account, because we're going to be making API calls saying that a user did something, and that won't work if the user isn't logged in. So that's just making sure this is happening, and sort of a fail-safe to check quickly in sort of a really rough way. We can make this better later, but for now, I just want this in place as sort of a safety and to catch me. We're also going to debug a warning. Not logged in. Sending back to main menu. Now, really important thing. This will break and cause an infinite loop and crash Unity if we require a login at scene 0. So we should probably have something here to check this. So if scene manager dot current scene, what's the number for this? This is harder because there's potentially multiple active scenes simultaneously inside of Unity. That's what those async things are doing, is loading a scene asynchronously, so you can actually have a scene loading in the background. So if you're doing like a loading screen, you can have an interactive loading screen and be loading the next bit of your game at the same time. The downside of that is that I need to get the active scene. Dot build index is equal to 0. Then debug.log warning. This is just to catch me screwing this up. So we're going to log out a warning that says at default scene help. And then we're just going to return here. So we're going to short circuit this, and it's not going to do anything, because if we did do something here and try to send us back to scene 0, all we'd be doing is reloading this check and doing this again, and then just infinitely trying to reload the new scene. And we don't want that to happen. So this check is just there to make sure that doesn't happen. So now, now that we have that, let's go and add this quickly to all of our main things. So I'm just going to create a login manager like this, and we're just going to throw this at the top of our scene so we can find it more easily. If I could, hand-eye coordination. There we go. And also, Nah, we'll leave that. But we have our login manager. We do not require login, but I can go into my other scene, which is somewhere. Here we go, 3v3 game, and that didn't work. Let's try this again. Copy our login manager, go to our 3v3 game and paste it in. And now I can take a look at this up at the top of the screen, and we can actually check that require login. So if I start the game here, we get kicked right back to our login screen. So even in the editor, this kind of helps us out a little bit and sends us back here. And then we can sign in like this. We log in, and then we actually get here. And then our game actually works because it detects that we're logged in. So now everything should be fine. And there's our game going and playing. I still haven't decided, so the player actually has an AI attached to it, so it's just gonna play. But this actually gives us all of the information we need to actually make this work. So users can log in, can do all the normal stuff, and it just works. And now we're going to play a little bit with events. So events are triggers that happen as you play. What we're going to do is have an event for a game starting, which is on this screen. When this screen loads, that's a new game starting. So we're just going to use that as our way of triggering that. And so that way we can actually keep track of the number of games that gets played. This also means, like, if we ever reload this scene, that counts as a new game starting. So we can actually use this as just like where you play. And so I think that makes sense. We can play around with this a little bit. It might not be ideal to do it this way, but notify record player game played. And so this is just going to give us a way to actually track how many games has this player played. So it'll let you know if, like, people are downloading the game, playing once, and then never coming back ever again, which we don't want. Or people might be, you may only have like 5 or 6 people playing it, but they may all be playing it every day. This gives us a way to actually record those events in a way that is useful to us. And we can even react to this and do certain things, whether that's like rewarding players for their 100th login or something like that. So let's do a game controller, attach that to here. And then in this, we're expecting the player to be signed in. So we're going to try that. And then record this. I forget where and how to do this. So we might just have to go and check the REST API. There is documentation about how to use some of this. But usually I've just gone to the REST API for lots of these examples. PlayFab events. This is a GitHub thing. Oh, that's cool. So there's lots of different examples of PlayFab. I was familiar of a entire card game built inside of PlayFab. So if you're interested in playing with that, there's a whole bunch of things. Yeah, a whole bunch of extra samples and things that you can use to kind of get started and learn different parts. If my style of chaos isn't helpful, and you want something that you can do at your own pace, there's a whole GitHub project full of different smaller samples. Oh wait, there's a postman option. I'm learning things. This is cool. So we can actually go in. Oh, cool. Okay. I didn't know about this. So I'm getting really excited. Postman, if you're unfamiliar, we're just going to quickly talk about this because this was way not what I was expecting to talk about, but I just saw something interesting. So Postman gives you a way to send REST APIs, REST API calls. Not just REST, it can do other things, but I mostly use it for REST. So there we go. What is happening is I guess a thing. But it gives you a way to kind of store these API collections that you can use to invoke things. You can also import them, and you can import them from a link. And I think that link is right somewhere. Create workspace, select import, select link, paste the following, which should be a big Swagger spec. This, it's quite long. That's okay. Let's import this. And I didn't even know this was here. So there we go. And now I have all of the Postman or PlayFab API inside of Postman that I can just do whatever I want with. That seems useful. So that's there now. Cool. So I guess if you were looking for a way to kind of explore it, this is probably almost a nicer way. Postman gives you lots of really handy ways for exploring APIs. So this kind of gives you a nice way to do that. If you're curious how all of that just worked, this is using OpenAPI. So this is a Swagger spec, which is just a JSON definition of a web page. That's kind of defining how all of this works. Defining where things are, the protocol to use, a bunch of extra information. It gives you full descriptions. That's really cool. So all of these are documented too. So like add friend. Oh, that's neat. Okay. It just kind of gives us all of this. View documentation. Oh, and it loads up the full. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. We're very distracted right now, but that's okay because this is really cool. So this is the full API docs for this function. Just inside of Postman, and we can just call it. Okay. Well, I know what I'm playing with later. We're gonna try to explore this a little bit. That's really cool. Okay. Let's get back a little bit on track though, and take a look at how we can do something other than authentication. Because all we've done so far is just sign a user in, and that's somewhat useful. It does give us a little bit of information about how the user is playing our game. But what I really want is to know who's playing and how that's going. So I want to track things that like we defined both teams as the North and the South team. So I want to track points for both of those. So an event for both of those is something I want to track. What I don't know is if I need to create something first. And before we do either of those, we're also going to track the number of games played. So this PlayFab client API dot event, right? Player event. Cool. So there's different types of events and they're just scoped to different things. Studios have titles. Titles can have players and players can have characters. And so you can kind of figure out what makes the most sense here. I think, what do I think? Let's do a player event. And I need to actually have this exist as a thing. I didn't define the request yet. So we need a var request equals a new right player event request. Again, just following the same format as we normally follow. So right player, our right client player event. Okay, slightly different. there's a client in here. But all this is doing is saying, here's our request for this. And then we can provide inside of here some of our extra information, like our event name. And we're just going to say, game started. Or let's call it game played. I think I'm changing my mind a bit, but let's call this game start. And there's a few reasons for this. One, this is not updating statistics. Statistics are something else. So inside of here, there's a PlayFab client API, and we have statistics. There are two different ways of kind of keeping track of things. You have player statistics, which are values, sort of key value pairs associated with certain things. So like total games played. There's also events. I think what I want is I want to have a way to write events and then have the server go and update the number of games played, so that the client never sees that and can't just say, I've actually played 999,000 games. We don't necessarily want that to be a possibility. And so what we can do is just limit it so that they're just sending an event that says, I started playing a game. And then we can say, okay, that means we need to do this, this, and this. In that case, it's increment the number of games played. And we can just roll that up on the back end. And we don't need to write any code to do that. PlayFab gives us options for doing that. Statistics are useful as a way to get stats and like do saving stuff. So if you need to save specific state in a cloud storage, so that it's available from other locations, so a user can sign in on any device and access specific characteristics, they could do that. It's also useful because what we're going to be doing is updating the specific statistics. By default, you cannot write a... Let's actually go and take a look at this. You cannot write... you cannot write a stat to something without any extra information. So there's some specific limits set on your title by default that are going to limit you from doing things like publishing player data or things like that. So updating statistics. So client profile options allow client access to profile properties. You can limit what clients can do. This prevents them from exploiting your service and doing specific things. So in this case, like accessing statistics, things like that, you might not want to be a public global thing. You might not want that to be open to everybody. Because if the statistics are open and it's determining things like character level in your MMO, and the client is what controls what the character level is, there's nothing preventing the player from just going in and saying, my character is max level, and just updating that and sending it up, and you don't know how to change that. Whereas by doing this event-based system where we can trigger an event and then have the server figure out how to handle that, we can do all of the complex stuff, the stuff that actually we don't want to be exploited online. We can sort that out. So that's why we're approaching this in this direction. That's why we're doing what we're doing, rather than just updating a number. Because we could just like figure out the number and then update it, but there's reasons we don't want to do that. So anyway, that's that. Let's see here. Write player event, and we're going to provide the request on player event success and on player, oops, no spaces, that's important, player event failure. Again, same thing with all the other APIs. We have a callback system, so succeeded and failed are just two callback methods. You don't need these to be separate methods. If you want to inline them as just an action or a lambda, you can, like, that's valid. Your code just might get a little bit more complicated. So that's why I'm doing this. .log object dot error generate error report. There we go. So this is just going to generate an error report for us so we can actually figure out what went wrong, why this didn't work. And then here, oops, debug.log game started. Cool. So we have all of this, and I think that should be everything. Again, it's been a while since I've done this, so I don't quite know if I've done everything correctly. We'll figure out really quick though, because I can just run this. And let's go and do something like this, and throw this over there. That might be a little bit small, but we can go and look at our title overview, the play stream monitor. We're gonna get this really small map, and we can see our events. So this is gonna show us the events that happen since we've been staring at this. So this can be like your online dashboard, to quickly see in real time what's happening in your game. So we can just try this. So we can log in, do that, we sign in, and I pause this, so we got nothing. Oh, there it is. Okay, I unpaused it, so now we get some things. We get client focus changes because we're actually unfocusing from our game window as we pause this. But if we run this again, hopefully we will see a whole bunch more information start coming in. So let's pull up the map just a little bit, because I think that's a really neat feature. And we can do this and log in. We'll see our user pop up, and we see a whole bunch of things happen, and we also see an event got triggered. So our game is just going to keep playing now, and we get some client focus changes because we just backgrounded our game. So now we know that it's in the background, and then we have our game start, which is just logging a bunch of information from this. So we can see the title and the player that logged it and things like that, when it was logged. That's handy. But the really cool thing is I can react to these events by doing some automation. And I need to remember how to do this. But I think what we want to do is add some rules. So I can do a new rule called games played. And then we can react to our event, which should be all the way at the bottom here. I think. Am I mistaken? Let's go and figure this out quick. Write events. There's all of our normal events. Let me refresh this and see if that updates this list, because I'm expecting to see a thing for my game. Huh. I'm not sure. We may need to search a little bit, because I'm not sure where this is. I was expecting it to be there, but I didn't see it. So we're gonna do this search instead. We should see our testing player. There they are. Last login should have been relatively recent. Yeah, 3 minutes ago. Okay. And I don't think we'll see anything for events here. What I'm looking to do is update like a statistic. So inside of here, you can attach extra things. So we can add like games played and set that equal to 0. So this just gives us a way to see statistics. That is very hard to say. And so when we can see those, we can actually work with them, but we're just doing that server side. The events we don't see. I also thought there was a way to see other things. So I'm in the segments section now. What this is actually a way for you to separate your player base into different groups. You can use this to just for your own purposes, just to see what's happening, and kind of figure out like how many players haven't played in the last 30 days. You can kind of separate that out. So see like inactive accounts. You can sort of tweak this however you want. The rules are custom, so you can just customize this however you want. There's lots of default things built in, but you can also add custom filters based off of certain statistics. It's like statistic value games played is greater than like 5. So players who've played the game, let's do this, is greater than or equal to 1. So anybody who gets a games played greater than or equal to 1 is going to end up inside of that segment. So we can actually see how many players of all of our players. So all of our players is everybody. So all 6 accounts that we've created so far. We can also see how many people have played it. So there's that. I need to figure out how to make this automation work, because I thought I knew how, and I don't anymore. Rewarded ads, rules, scheduled tasks. That's neat. So this can be like a cron job almost of certain things, it looks like. You can have a recurring, and it uses cron jobs. That's neat. So you can have something that is going to go and invoke a cloud function. These are defaults. So like default built-in things. But if you go and define a new cloud script, which you can do here by just registering a new function with a test, something like that, you would register your function URL. So if you're doing like Azure functions, you would go and plug in your Azure function here, and then you can just plug that in anywhere you need it. It also supports queuing. I have never used the queue part, so I don't know the best way to use that. I don't know the best way to interact with that, but that's there as well. Let's see. Other things. I'm going to go and create a new rule and see if this works now. So I think I'm in the right, there it is. Okay. So at the bottom of our thing, you can see we have this title, the title with the title name or ID of our game, and then game start. This is the event that I created by running this inside of my code. So inside of Unity, I ran this event and sent it up to PlayFab and said, this happened. And now I have this event type. And I'm just going to say game started. That's our new rule. And we can add conditions and actions onto this. So I can send a push notification or email or give somebody currency for starting a game or something like that. But what we're doing here is basing this off of events rather than the player acting themselves. So the player is no longer able to like give themselves currency, instead completing a quest or doing completing a game or scoring a point or whatever would do that instead. So in this case, I'm just going to do increment player statistic of games played, and we're going to increment it by 1. And that's it. So now, if I go and look at our title overview, we now have some automation that we've just created that is going to go and automatically increment this. Let's shrink that a little bit, so hopefully this is easier to see. But we can actually see this come in real time. So if I stop this now, our client lost focus. We can start. We're going to get kicked back to our login menu. I can log into the user with our account, log in, and now we get a whole bunch of events. And the new thing that happened is our automation. And this is what happened. That's the new thing that we created. So now players who've played a game was entered. So we created that new player segment. So anybody who has a games played greater than or equal to 1 is part of the players who have played a game. This player just entered that because they just played a game, their first game. So they are now part of the players who've played a game. And so we also incremented our player statistic by 1. Neither of these are things that I programmed. They're just rules that are part of how this works, and they're all managed on the server side. So clients can't go and change this. They can't go and update the number of games they've played without sending lots and lots of events for game starts. But as we play more and more, we'll get more and more and more games played, and we can use that to kind of count up what's going on. So now we just want to add a few other events for things like goals scored or goals scored against, things like that. I'm not a sports person, so I don't actually know the terminology, but we can make it up. So that's all this is doing. And on our client side, this is the entire thing. We're just 2 functions to just call something with a string, and then we can just handle everything else on the server side, and we can change the server side implementation without ever having to touch this client. So if somebody downloads this right now, I could change every part of what happens when that happens just by doing all sorts of other fun things. There we go. Sorry about that. Cool. All right. All right. Getting a little bit of spam, but that's okay. So this is like, for me, this is probably one of the coolest features of this, because this is actually really useful as like a telemetry information. You can see information from this that you wouldn't otherwise. And I think we can even attach custom data to this game start, saying specific things about like what's going on and how all of that is working, that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. So this body is just a dictionary of random extra objects. And I don't know if we need that right now, but we will need it when we go and add our other stuff. So when we add scoring, and we can actually do that, I think. So we're just going to copy our event stuff, and let's go and find out where we handle scoring. So inside of our goal, we have our detect goal. And I'm not sure what I want to do here. So we're detecting when the player scores a goal right here. And I could just do this. And for starters, we can just leave it here. This should be fine. And we can even Yeah, this is smart. We're just gonna discard those callbacks for now. Don't do this. 'Cause there's a lot of problems with what I just did. By doing this, what we've done is created two callbacks that are never actually going to do anything. They're just there to kind of take up space and make sure we match the signature. What this is going to do is just give a goal scored event so that we can actually track that and give us a way to actually detect that. Detect when goals are scored and react to that online. The downside is I'm just saying a goal was scored. I don't know if that's a goal scored for me or a goal scored for the other team. There's no way for me to figure that out. So, all right. Sorry about that. Cool. We have our goal scored. That's going to just go up to our server and we'll be able to handle that. I want to add a dictionary though that defines extra information about this goal. So we could add things like who scored it or who did a certain action or something like that. It gives us that ability to kind of control how things are working. So we can do a new dictionary with this is supposed to have something in it and I didn't do that. Sorry. With our body equal to a new dictionary, and we're going to pull this out a little bit. Goal details. Just create a new thing like this. So we're creating a new dictionary that's just going to store strings and objects. And I don't think I've ever tried just sending random object metadata like that before. So we're going to try it and see what happens. Normally I've just used like a string or an integer, but we actually have an enum, which I think is just going to turn into an int for us. Like so 0 or 1. We'll see though. We'll see what happens. It also means that somebody needs to score a goal, which might be harder than, yeah, we'll see. So goal details, let's actually use a dictionary constructor here. So what this does is create a key value pair that we can just pass in and use that to create whatever it is we're trying to do. The offensive team. So the scoring team is what we want to update. Scoring team. Oh, and then I call out to the scoring controller. I should be doing this here, not inside of this. That makes a lot more sense. All right. We'll leave this function alone and we're going to go over to the score goal. And we should actually be attaching to this on goal scored event. We will do that, but we're going to do it after we do this way. So public void record goal. Something like that. And we want to have the game teams scoring team like that. This will give us a way to actually track the scoring team. And we're also going to just, because we can, I'll send over the current score. So we'll grab an int of the current score, and this can just happen at the end here. So record goal of the scoring team with the current score. So basically we're just implementing this, but we're doing it here because that's what I thought. We can make that better later. What I like to do is kind of do things roughly and get things working, and then figure out where that fits after it's working, rather than trying to do it all simultaneously. If you don't know what the end result of something looks like before it's done, it can be really hard to even know how to shape the rest of what you're building. And so this is just how I've tended to work, is write it kind of messy and then come back and figure it out. Current score, and we're going to give it this. What am I doing? Current score. And so that'll be their new score. And so this way we can actually track how many goals any team has scored. So you'll be able to know how many goals were scored against you and how many goals were scored for you, just by using this one function. So let's go and run this. Let's attach this over here. There's all of that. And let's run our game and see what happens. All right. And then we can sign in. Tabbing doesn't work. I should fix that. And so we end up here. Did I detach my thing? I think I might have, because oops. All right. I'm getting lost, but that's okay. Let's go back here. All right. And then eventually one of these AIs is going to score. They're not very good. But there we go. All right, it seems like we're just a little bit behind as far as scoring goes. So the events are starting to roll in now. We have game start right there. And more kind of showing up over time. Goal scored, perfect. So let's go and pull this up and look at the information that we got as part of this. And so we can just pull up the entire JSON blob of everything that got scored. And we do actually get the enum name. That's really cool. So we actually get the name of the enum value for the thing that we scored with. And then we have the current score for everything that's coming in. So we can actually use these to make a decision about how a player should be affected by this event. So when a player records a thing, goal scored, looks like goals are getting scored in the background there. That's interesting. But let's go and add some automation to this. So if we go into our automation again, add some rules, do a new rule. It might take a little bit for this to show up. So it's not quite there yet. So title dot goal scored, I think. And so that matches the name, so that should eventually get picked up. And then we can have a condition. So our condition is going to be scoring team is the South team, which is the one the player is on, so is South team. Let's make sure this is correct. Scoring team is South team. Player team scored. That'll be a good name for our current rule. And that'll be incrementing a custom player statistic, which we haven't created. So let's go and create that statistic. And then we can come back to this and actually get this working. So let's go and find the player that we're playing this whole thing with, and start adding some of these statistics that we want to track. So you can see our games played is already incremented for us. It's already up to 2. And it's just doing its thing. Let's go and add a team goals scored. And we'll just create that with a value of 0. And team goals allowed, I guess we'll use. And so we can set both of these to 0. We're just doing this so that we can create them. One note here, you'll notice that these are green, and that's because they're marked as new. This is how we know we're creating things. I have to click save, or those won't get saved for us. They also won't get created. So by clicking save, those actually get applied to our user. So that's how that works. But this gives us 2 values that we can actually rely on to do different things with. And then team most goals scored. Sure. I needed to save that. Team most goals scored in game. And this is just going to track the maximum number of goals you've scored in a single game. So during the course of a game, whatever that is, just assign that. And we'll do one for allowed as well. Most goals allowed in a game. And we'll set that to 0. So now we have 2 options for scoring and for allowing goals. And we can save these 2. And now we have 4 more statistics that we're going to do. I'm not going to write any code to make this work. We're just going to go over to our automation and create some rules to automate this for us. So we have our game start. Let's go and create a new event for this. All the way at the bottom here, we should see, it seems like it's still working. So D73C3 dot goal scored. D73, oops, C3 goal scored, and we should click that create. There we go. Condition scoring team, I believe is the word we've been using. We want this to be equal to the south team. When that happens, we want to increment a statistic. Everything we're working with here is statistics based. So team goals scored incremented by 1. And goals scored, something like that. And you can make this as complicated as you want. For this, still a relatively basic game. I'm trying to keep things simple. So this is what we're working with right now. But we can tweak it as much as we would like. We can also go and add team goals allowed, and we can jump down here. And then I think we're good. So this will have goal scored is what we're looking for. Perfect. This condition is going to be the same thing, but for the scoring team to have the value of north team. Again, we're just using north and south as the references for teams because that's what I had. And then our action is incrementing our statistics. So goals allowed, increment by 1. So if the north team, the red team scores, we've allowed 1 extra goal. So we can just save that. And the other thing I would like to do is total points scored. We already are tracking like career points scored and points allowed, but we also want to track something else. We also want to track the ability for a player to score the most in one game. So most goals in game, question mark. And we're just going to react to the same event. So goal scored, add a condition, most goals in game. If this is for our scoring team of South team. So this is, again, our player is on this team. And I don't know the best way to do this, so we're gonna quickly try to figure this out. Most goals scored. Is there a better way to do this? I don't know if I want to do this here. The way we do this, I think, is through cloud scripts and functions, not through these rules, because all we can do here is increment and do other interactions. Most of the complicated things are going to end up inside of a cloud script or an Azure function. So we might want to actually tie this into some other function. So instead of making our own custom rule here, I think we can do that as part of these other functions. We'll just want a custom cloud function. So that might be something like a Azure function, or it might be a cloud script thing. Let's see. So the legacy stuff is something that I don't know. This gives you a way to write code in, I don't know what language this is. Either way, it looks like JavaScript, but you can write a function and get something like that. Like it says, this is the legacy version. What you can also do is just register a function. And this will be like Azure functions type things. So you can go and create your cloud service out in Azure, and then just go and invoke that and say, every time that somebody scores a goal, invoke that and have that function interact with my game somehow. So this gives you lots of different ways to make that happen. So yeah, I'm not sure the best way to set all this up right now. So we're going to think on that over the night. We have about 30 minutes left to kind of finish some of this stuff up, but we should not save PlayFab. There we go. I think we should be scoring goals because everything, I haven't changed the game, so the game is still playing. So if I go and check out the players, I think our rules should already be applied and should be acting. So if I go and look at the statistics now, yeah, we can see we've only allowed 2 goals and we've scored 5 times. And I didn't even stop my Unity game. I just kept that running in the background and things were happening. And they were actually ending up here, running through that rule that we created and then getting evaluated. And now we have this. So we can actually use this to kind of do all of that fun stuff. I think this part is really cool. Because it gives you all these fun statistics for like measuring how players have done, things like that. Like you can use this to determine something, maybe increment the difficulty of AI, because eventually the player would actually be playing here. And so if you see goals allowed, like global goals allowed across all players is higher than the goals scored, it might be difficult. Only English. Yes. Unfortunately, I do not speak other languages. So unfortunately, we're stuck with that. If there's issues with like captioning or something, I can take a look at that though, if that's something that is missing and should be there. Then let me know and I can take a look. But yeah. Let's see here. I think that's it. I think we have like what we wanted to get done here. We have our games played. We have the goals allowed, goals scored. And I think this was probably continuing to play, so we should have even different numbers now. Yeah, we scored 2 more. That's okay. If there's certain things that I'm covering that you would like me to cover in more depth, or explain in a different way, let me know, and we can kind of step back and do that sort of stuff. We're kind of winding down for this. I don't know if anybody else can hear it, but my voice is a little bit tired. So we'll probably be ending the stream in a bit. But if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more about all of this, yeah. Other than that, I don't know what we should do next. We track goals scored. Players can do things. And then I think tomorrow we'll probably look at doing some of the more custom cloud functiony stuff. Maybe throw in some Azure functions and some GitHub stuff. I think that's what I'd like to do, as well as making this a little bit nicer. While we're here, and everything's behaving like this, let's make the game a little bit more easy to understand. Right now it's a black screen, and that makes it really difficult to actually tell where you are in space because there's no reference at all. And so I think what we'll want eventually is like some large background object, like a planet or something in the background that you can actually use as a reference point. So you'll be able to see it moving and use that to determine what's going on. For now, I'm going to add another particle system. This has always been my really quick way to add like more interest to space games. Let's just open up Unity here and add a particle system. There it is. And let's put this there, and then we're just going to move this into the background here by a decent amount, but not too much. And then for emissions, we're going to, I think, turn this into a box. That'll be probably the most interesting. The box, because by keeping this as a 3D shape, we'll actually get some fake depth as part of this, which should be kind of interesting. And then I'm going to set the lifetime to 500. So these will be around for a while. They will kind of fade in and out, but that's okay. And then start speed is 0. And then scale, we want this to be, let's do 100 by 200. Oh, that's into the screen. Wrong thing then. Let's do like 50. I do want there to be a little bit of depth, so you can actually see if I go into this. There's going into the screen, even though we're building a 2D game, there's actually depth from the nearest star to the furthest star. That means you'll get like a parallax type effect. And then we can just increment this. And make it big enough so that it will always cover. This is not this isn't like a well engineered way of solving this. This is just a way of solving this. So we're going to do something like that, and then as our camera moves through this scene, hopefully we'll actually be able to see what's going on and be able to actually interact with that. And I think that's it. So other thing to do is to do random between two colors. So this is just going to randomize the colors slightly. And we're going to do some like light cyan versus some light orangey colors. Nothing really striking, like nothing really vibrant, just enough so like all of this appears different. And then I'm going to add a color over lifetimes script so that we can just fade this slowly in and out, so things don't just like disappear. And then I think that's it. Really quick way to kind of add some depth to the game. And let's actually also add a sphere. Make it big. Something like this. You can't see that. There. Really big. And then let's put that in the background. I went the wrong way. There we go. So it's just a sphere right now. It's not actually that interesting, but it gives some point of reference, and I can put this in like a corner somewhere. Something like that almost. And you'll almost always be able to see it, but you'll be able to see it move. And if we texture that, you'll also be able to see that something's happening. And just by putting things in the background, I think this will get a lot less confusing about what's going on. I hope it'll make a lot more sense and be less confusing. So let's do test and testing. Log in. Cool. We logged in. We can see our planet. I need to pre-warm my particle star field because there are no stars. So let's go and do that. Particles, pre-warm. So what pre-warming does for a particle system is it's just going to simulate it for its lifetime so that it's pre-seeded, so it looks like this rather than starting empty and then having things get spawned into it. So hopefully makes that a little bit nicer and less striking, like things aren't just going to be blank at the beginning. And so we can log in. There we go. And now we have stars, do a little dance at the beginning, and then we have our planet in the background, and we can kind of use that as a way of judging references. And so there's actually things you can see and see like moving in the background that hopefully make it a little bit nicer to understand how this works. And actually understand that you're not like lost. We probably want more stars, so let's do that. We're at our maximum number of particles. This is never a bad idea. We're just going to increment that particle system by 10 or by 10 times. So we now have 10,000 particles. This is not a great way to do this because that's a lot. Ideally what we would do is we'd take like a texture or something that is textured like stars and had multiple stars on it, and then we would just rotate it and only use a couple. Doing it individually per star is a little bit much, but it works. And for now, at least it gives us this nice effect, and we can tweak that and make it look nice later. What I've been doing is doing some of the visual stuff, like these spaceships I built off stream. This afternoon, I'm hoping to add it like an arena, so we have something a little bit less boxy. You'll also see the game lags now. We have like 6 game objects, and it's lagging because I added thousands of particles. So let's tune that down just a little bit. Like 4,000, sure. That's still a lot, but hopefully better than 10,000. So, and this is just tweaking it. If you're new to game development, the part that I'm doing now is mostly, I think of it as the fun part. Like the cool thing with game development is it mixes like really cool, like technical engineering tasks with really fun, creative things. Like unlike engineering where there's like a certain algorithm or something that might make the most sense for what you're doing, a lot of like gaming stuff, you can kind of tweak it to make it fun or to show what you want it to. And so we can kind of have fun with it. For me, that's always the exciting part, is kind of going in and tweaking things until things play well. So yeah, there's that. But now hopefully it's a lot less easy to like not understand where you are anymore. This will be a little bit easier if I turn off our AI and actually let myself control it again. Because what I had done is just swapped out my player controller with a AI controller. This is a game we can play, so I should play this. The downside is, well, I have to type this with a control or with a keyboard. So if I want to play with a controller, the game starts basically instantly. So I have to plug my controller in, which it isn't. So let's play with the keyboard. But you can kind of see what's going on, and it's a little bit easier to understand. At least I'm having an easier time understanding. One thing that would be useful is like field markers, because I don't actually know where the center of the screen is. In that case, I had just I flew right past where the ball was going to spawn. I'm trying to catch that. So we should consider that. Yeah. I'm not sure. If anybody has any questions, now would be great. Otherwise, I might end the stream a couple minutes early. And then we can pick up tomorrow and kind of do some of the final polish. I think tomorrow we'll probably take a look at GitHub and Git and do some of that. One of the quick things we can do for working with GitHub, I'm going to open this up in my Explorer instance. So we end up with this, with way too many things. And so if you type WT, that's the Windows terminal. What that's going to do is open up the Windows terminal for you to just work inside of your Unity thing. So this is our Unity project, and what I can do is just git init and init a Git repo here, and now everything is under source control. I don't think we have a git ignore here. The cool thing is GitHub provides one, and if I can figure out where that is, GitHub git ignore Unity. There's a repo that stores all of these. There it is. GitHub.gitignore, perfect, or /gitignore. Here is the Unity gitignore. You can use this as a way to ignore most of the Unity files that you do not need. This is not the only gitignore that GitHub provides. There are lots of them for lots of different things. So even if you've already created your project and didn't choose like the add gitignore feature when creating a new repo in GitHub, you can go and find it here and use that to add it later. So let's go and do that quickly. Let's grab the raw version. There we go. And then inside of here, how do I want to do this? Yeah. And then you can add your gitignore. Let's actually. Sorry, I'm thinking about things. And then I left notes in my Visual Studio Code instance, so I don't really want to pull that up right now, unfortunately, because I wasn't thinking about doing this. Dot gitignore. And let's go and drop this over here into Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio. And we can just paste this here and use this gitignore to pull out a whole bunch of things. If I refresh this now, it should hopefully add less things to our project. And the idea here is that we no longer need to track all of that. And I think Visual Studio should pick up that we're in a Git repo now. And there we go. Oh, okay. I know what's going on. It is trying to ship the PlayFab stuff as part of this. So all of PlayFab, the entire PlayFab SDK, it's trying to ship that in my Git repo. So we're not going to commit this right now because I need to figure that out. But that's what's going on. There's a whole bunch of changes here. I think some of these should be ignored by our git ignore, but I will have to go and double check. But that's what's going on. Anyway, there are some side effects. There are some downsides to storing game-based stuff inside of Git. Git is not really great for like large file sizes. So anything really big, Git LFS, large file system, I think, storage. I don't know what the S stands for. But what that's going to do is actually store files in a larger format. There's other reasons why game stuff doesn't work great in Git or most source control, really. Mostly that's because you're working with like music, and music doesn't really have a obvious way to like merge two edits for it. Usually what you want is you want somebody to check out code and lock it so that nobody else can make changes to it, or and that's how you want to deal with like art assets. Git doesn't really do that. There isn't really a way to like claim a file and just say this is mine. That can cause issues in like larger teams. For small indie type stuff that you might be building yourself, it should be fine, unless you're doing lots of like art stuff, and then you might have to think about that. But anyway, that's the Git stuff. We will try to dive into that more tomorrow and hopefully figure out how we can add like some CI stuff. I don't know if we're going to actually be able to do that. I need to double check on the notes and see if this here game CI is something that we can actually pull down and start using or not. Mostly I'm wondering how to manage some of this license stuff. What might end up happening is I might do some of these secret creations before the next stream, which, if you're wondering, the next stream is tomorrow, 11 to 3 Pacific time. And the reason for this is I don't want this stuff to leak, because that's using actual things, and I can't re-roll it as easily as like test accounts like what we're developing in right now. So yeah, that's that. What else? I think that's it. So I think we'll kind of slow everything down and sort of stop the stream for today. Thanks everybody for joining. This is super fun. If you have other things that you would like us to add to this to kind of make our game a little bit more complete, or just other features, I'm trying to think of a way to add more control to this, some other ability or something that we can add that makes this a little bit more interesting, because right now it's kind of just running into things. So trying to think if there's like a tractor beam or something that we can use to make it feel like there's more control and you actually have more control over your movements. That's something that I would like to check out. I would also be kind of curious if we can do online configuration and maybe have some sort of title configuration for how players should interact. I've never tried that before, and I think that'd be kind of neat for like ship speed and for the ball respawning time to be edited live over a cloud service rather than us having to change the game ourselves. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I think that'd be cool. So, yeah. Other than that, thank you everybody for stopping by and saying hi and chatting. That's always super fun when people join chat and ask questions. So please feel free to. But yeah, this is day 2. We have one more day remaining where we're going to actually try to finish this. The goal again is not to finish the game like That doesn't mean at the end of the third day, in the next 4 hours, we're going to build a full, like we're going to get everything working. It's going to be ready to ship. It just means that we're going to kind of have covered everything that I wanted to cover here. There's lots of other things we could do here, like adding multiplayer that we definitely aren't going to do in this set of streams, but we could do at a later point. So if that's something that people are interested in, I can take a note and dive into that. Other than that, I think that's it. So thanks everybody for joining, and I am going to end the stream now. So have a great afternoon or day, whichever is appropriate for you. And I hope to see you all tomorrow when we kind of finish all of this up. And if you have any questions about things, that would be a great time to bring in them. So thanks everybody, and I hope you all have a great day. I already said that.